Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to another episode of Blasphemers Bible. And Mark has fled the country with family for a few days vacation. And I understand that
hopefully he gets back in.
Is he really hoping that, though?
Oh,
Is he really?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then I think Lawrence has come down with a case of herpes or something. So he's
that's exactly what I came down with. Actually, it's a real bummer, but I am currently working on the science to figure out a cure. So,
well, this is what you get for going to the non-atheist sanctioned orgies.
I just wanted to explore a bit. So my apologies.
And we respect that, but safety first.
But as we know, he's always been one failed experiment away from being a supervillain. So good luck to you, sir. And then we, of course, Kip has joined us from obviously Brazil.
But not actually, but obviously. So, hey, listen, do you know what I learned this week? And it kind of changed my life. I learned that Gojira performed in the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. And oh my God.
Really?
It was incredible. Have you not seen this?
No,
it was very cool.
Oh my God.
I was going to say, most people have not seen the opening ceremony, but they've got lots of opinions about it.
Yeah. It's true.
I missed the opening ceremony. I was really bummed about that.
Gojira won the Olympics. And they are, you have to, after the show's over, you guys have to look this up and watch this, because they are perched on the side, precariously hanging out of the windows of a giant Renaissance castle.
Yeah.
And,
it was the building.
And performing.
It was the building that was used to imprison Marie Antoinette.
It's so awesome.
And there's also all of the other windows have Marie Antoinette holding her head.
Yes, holding her head.
Is there anything not cool about any of this?
Oh, it's
well, I don't
amazing.
know how the Americans feel about their sharpshooting performances, but apparently you really need a school to get any good.
Yeah, they thought that Marie Antoinette was satanic because she was wearing a red dress.
Wasn't that just her blood?
And Gojira.
The problem is, here in America, we believe in having guns, but we don't believe in training anybody.
I maintain if they put books and silhouettes of school children, you guys probably would have swept the category as the targets.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
So,
probably
any other opening commentary?
Shooting, right?
One at a time. We're gonna go with Kip first. Kip, what'd you say?
No, sorry, it was bad. Yeah. So never mind what I
Okay,
said.
then never mind.
I'm
Then
sure
Aaron,
it
what did you say?
I was asking if anybody had any more opening commentary before we dive in.
I got nothing, but
okay, because I know how eager you are to get to the giant.
See, here's the thing. I want to talk about the giant, but I also wanted to have some stuff prepped for that. But this week has just been, past couple days, my ass has been kicked by a certain little friend I like to call Stars. But
Two.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a certain variant of that. Yeah.
Two Stars?
Well,
yeah. This is where we get to God breaking up with Saul again, because as those of you who might recall chapter 13, he kind of already did that. But he's going to do it again, because that is the sign of a healthy relationship, breaking up and getting back together with very public dramatic outbursts and curses, because he might have slightly delayed killing a few people and possibly some animals too. The genocide wasn't quite where God wanted it to be. And so, he's going to kill Saul and his entire family, because that is the appropriate reaction.
Yeah, this God doesn't really think things through.
Yeah, this is 1 Samuel 15, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, can I
So I've
I
got
read it? Because I actually
Oh my gosh, I'd love
I
to read
actually
it
have
too.
my
Let me read a
my own
comment first.
translation of. Oh, okay.
Yes, Matt White says, Aaron, this stream is an object lesson in why theist superintendents have to work so hard trying to have this taught in schools and why the schools declined vociferously.
Yes. Teaching
Very
children
good.
that the best method of emotional regulation is genocide is probably not a good go-to.
And if your children disappoint you, drown them.
Listen, guys. Listen. I've learned. I've
Going to the
learned that
Casey Anthony School of Parenting. Sorry.
I've learned that it's not genocide if you didn't actually kill them all. It doesn't count. Okay.
So
that Gavin
that's
Orland?
why he left the one
Right,
being alive.
Is that Ortland again?
Sounds like a
yeah,
thing, yeah.
No, that's
It could
Salazar.
be.
You leave one to tell the tale.
Thought it was Arya Stark. Leave one wolf alive, and the sheep are never safe.
Yes. And Diana Hill says, what's Aaron's drink of choice today? I'm drinking one of my favorite local brews, local to Dallas.
What's the
10%
ABV on that one?
ABV, I think it is.
Oh,
Because it's almost noon somewhere.
I
Wonderful
was
thing about around her.
I was up until almost 1 a.m. Drinking a selection of fine whiskeys with my new best friend last night.
Uh-huh.
So you're welcome, everyone. That I'm here, and
yes, I thank you
somewhat-
sincerely.
somewhat coherent this morning.
Yeah.
But
Well, brilliant. I'm glad that you can make it, sir. All right. So, and thank you for reading this. One more comment. The Sinister Porpoise offers $2 for snack food.
yay!
Yeah. All right, Kip, take it away.
All right, you're ready to read. 1 Samuel 15, right?
Yep.
So I did a video about this text recently, and as a result, I ended up making my own translation, which is always fun. All right, so here we go. Now, Shmuel said to, is that the beginning? Is that verse 1? Maybe
Yeah,
I didn't-
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. All right. I don't have verse numbers in here. Okay, now Shmuel said to Shaul, that's Samuel and Saul, Yahweh sent me to anoint you as king over his people, over Israel. Now listen to the sound of the words of Yahweh. So says Yahweh Tsabaot, or Yahweh of armies or hosts. I am avenging that which Amalek did to Israel. What happened to him on the way when he came up out of Egypt? Now go and slaughter Amalek and offer them up for cherem. That's, to kill everyone. Everything that is his without sparing him. So kill, from man to woman, from child to infant, from ox to sheep, from camel to donkey. Then
With
Shaul,
family values.
very, very, very astute family values. Then Shaul summoned the people, and he mustered them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen, and 10,000 men of Judah. He led them up to the city of Amalek, and he laid an ambush in the wadi. And Shaul said to the Kenites, go, turn, and get down from the midst of the Amalekites, lest I include you with them. For you performed kindness to all the sons of Israel when they came up from Egypt. So the Kenites turned away from the midst of Amalek. Then Shaul slaughtered Amalek from Havilah to where you go to Shur, which is right on the border of Egypt. He captured Agag, king of Amalek, alive, and all the people he offered up for cherem by the sword. But Saul and the people spared Agag and the best flocks, cattle, and the second brood, the lambs and all the best, for they were unwilling to offer these up for cherem. They didn't want to kill them all. Sorry, lost my place. Okay, rather, Everything worthless and whatever was weak, they offered up for cherem. The word of Yahweh came to Shmuel, saying, I regret that I installed Shaul as king, for he has turned from after me, and on my word he has not followed through. And Shmuel was angry, and he cried out to Yahweh that entire night. Then Shmuel rose up to call Shaul in the morning, and he gave Shmuel this report. Shaul came to Carmel, and be sure, he set up for himself, it literally says he set up for himself a hand. This is probably like a monument or a stele. I'm sure Tomer has things to say about that. Then he turned and carried on and went down to Gilgal. So Shmuel came to Saul, and Shaul said to him, you are surely blessed by Yahweh. I've carried out the word of Yahweh. But Shmuel responded, what is this sound of sheep in my ears, and the sound of cattle that I am hearing? Shaul said, they were brought, them from the Amalekites which the people spared, only the best of the sheep and the cattle, for sacrifices to Yahweh your God. But the rest we offered up for cherem. But Shmuel said to Saul, stop, let me report to you what Yahweh said to me in the night. And he said to him, speak. So Shmuel said, is this really so small a thing in your eyes? You are the head of the tribes of Israel. Yahweh anointed you as king over Israel. Yahweh dispatched you on the way, and he said to you, you will offer up for cherem the sinners, Amalek. You are to wage war against them until they are completely finished. Why have you not listened to the voice of Yahweh? You have quickened to the plunder and have performed poorly in the eyes of Yahweh. Shaul responded to Shmuel, but I have listened to the voice of Yahweh. I went on the way that Yahweh sent me. I brought back Agag, king of the Amalekites, and I made a cherem offering of Amalek. And the people took from the spoils, sheep and cattle, the best of the cherem offering, to sacrifice to Yahweh your God in Gilgal. And Shmuel said, is Yahweh's delight as much in burnt offering and sacrifices as in listening to the voice of Yahweh? See here, obedience is better than sacrifice, to listen than the fat of rams. For the sin of divination is rebellion. Iniquity and monuments are insubordination. Because you have spurned the word of Yahweh, he has spurned you as king. Then Shaul said to Shmuel, I have sinned, for I brushed past the mouth of Yahweh and your words because I was afraid of the people, and I listened to their voice. So now please take up my sin and turn with me that I may worship Yahweh. But Shmuel said to Shaul, I will not turn with you because you spurned the word of Yahweh. Yahweh has spurned you from being king over Israel. So Shmuel turned to go. But then he grabbed the ends of his robe and he tore it. And Shmuel said to him, Yahweh has torn the kingdom of Israel from you on this day, and he has given it to your countryman who is better than you. Even so, the splendor of Israel will not break. He does not regret this, because he is not a man filled with regret. Sorry about the dogs. Then Shaul said, I have sinned. Now please honor me in front of the elders of my people and in front of Israel. Turn with me, and I will worship Yahweh your God. So Shmuel turned after Shaul, and Shaul worshipped Yahweh. Then Shmuel said, present to me Agag, king of Amalek. So Agag walked over to him bound, and Agag said, surely the bitterness of death has circled back. And Shmuel said, just as your sword has made women childless, so your mother be made childless among women. Then Shmuel cleaved Agag into pieces before Yahweh in Gilgal. And Shmuel went to Ramah, and Shaul went up to his house, Gibeah of Saul. Shmuel did not see Saul again until the day he died, but Shmuel mourned for Saul. Yahweh was filled with regret that he had made Shaul king over Israel.
Cleaved Agag into pieces.
So
This is my last resort.
yes.
No breathing.
You know, to be fair, that's probably the most modern reference Aaron has ever made.
Oh, fuck you.
Probably. Hey, it was a good song,
So that
but admittedly,
I
memorable. Yeah, fun.
I find
I
find
hate to
interesting
burst
that
your
it's
bubble,
oh.
guys, but that word, I think it's probably in line with that. But it's a super rare word, and its meaning is hotly disputed about what he
Yeah.
did to Agag.
I think the idea of
Just-
cutting him
you
into
should say-
pieces is a traditional
I think-
commentary. Yeah.
Sorry, I think it's a very rare word. Keep is right. That's because it's a hapax.
It's once. It's the only.
That's what. Yep. Yeah. So
I mean, he could have just
when-
beheaded him. Then he is in two pieces, which is technically pieces.
Well,
Yeah,
I think it's
Yeah.
more than just a hapax, right? I think there aren't any words that have a similar, that have the same source. The
let me-
yeah,
source,
the
right?
same
Yeah.
root. It doesn't have the same.
let me pull it
no.
up. It's like, and this is the fun stuff, right? With
I mean, from
with
the
reading
context,
Bible.
from the context, it's obviously referring to killing.
Right,
So,
right.
but you do have
But, like-
some who, I mean, Rashi says cut him into 4 pieces. Very explicit.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
here's
but,
basing it on the Targum. So then Aramaic, it has a
I don't think it's the
Targum.
Targum. Is
The
it
Targum apparently Targum, translates that word as ufashach, which means and split. I think.
No.
I'm not sure. Or broke
Ufa-
off.
yeah,
I don't know exactly.
No, that's not like it means. He broke off a branch. Oh, I'll check Van Staldine Sulman. Van Staldine
so, like-
Solman. Sorry.
Yeah, so the Talmud says broke off a branch and gave us several twigs, and the
So,
word for
I'll
broke
just-
off is fashach.
Yeah. I'll just
So
read
maybe
the.
he
Let
just
me
pulled
just.
his arms off like a Wookiee.
Maybe it's that
Let me
the
just-
thing where they pull them with 4 horses.
Let me just read the entry in the Hebrew Aramaic lexicon here. A shafal formation. It's suggested it's a shafal formation, possibly from the verb suf. In modern Hebrew, they suggest shatzaf as
Yeah.
as an equivalent to separate.
Yeah.
And here it says the exact sense of the verb is uncertain. Versions, the Septuagint says esfaxein. The Vulgate, infrastra concidit. The Peshitta and the Targum is pasach de kadap, divide up. The Peshitta and the Targum and most all of the Vulgate point to the traditional translation to cut into pieces. And especially also translated this, so a couple of, but they're just listing people who translated it this way.
Yeah,
But with
it seems-
reference especially to Vishasa, which is also considered by Stoeb for the problems in translating this word. See the note. So yeah, it's and this is the fun part of working with ancient languages, right? Every now and then you'll encounter a word and nobody knows what it means because it only occurs once, and it's in a language that nobody has spoken for thousands of years.
It is possible that you do have sometimes like 2 or more what's called them, like shorashim, like roots. Verb
Mhm.
groups that are similar to each other and they mean similar things. For example, like sa'ak means to scream and tzachak means to laugh, so they're very similar. So it's very possible, like you said, that there is a chatzaf, which is 1 letter difference, which has a similar meaning. So
yeah, even Caspi also suggested it, and I'll get to that.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
interesting. That's possible.
Yeah, what
I mean, I guess the
noticing
main
here-
the vibe is that he like killed him in like a derogatory way, like he would
Yes.
kill an animal or something.
What I'm getting
He
here
was
is
not given.
two things. One, God likes waste. He
Mm.
just likes to waste things. He likes
Well,
to waste resources.
It's all for
He
him, though.
Yeah,
That's
he
it,
likes when his
right?
people waste resources. He has no compassion for the people he's sending. But the more important thing is when God is supposed to be all-knowing, all-seeing, and we hear all this about prophecy, I need to point out every time when it shows up that God laments the shit that he did because he couldn't see the future. I need for evangelicals watching the show, because I know that some of them do. God doesn't know what the fuck he's doing because he doesn't know what's going to happen. So how can he prophesy what's going to happen thousands of years from now when he doesn't know the repercussions from his own actions that he will end up regretting tomorrow? So God has resentment of his own actions based on his inability to see the future. You know, I regret having created people, and now I have to wipe them from the face of the earth. I've come to kill Moses. Oh, I didn't see that they were going to, violently circumcise their son. And I regret having installed the king, because I obviously didn't think this through either. This is your timeless, immortal God who is beyond time and knows all things. No, he fucking doesn't.
And we have the contradiction in this chapter itself, in verse 11. I am grieved that I have made Saul king. I regret me that I made Saul king. And yet, didn't Samuel just say, God is not a man to regret? Basically, not those exact words, but again, right here in one chapter. Bada. Yes, no?
Yep.
Yes, no. Yes, no.
I actually think this is a feature of this chapter. I don't think it's a bug. But it's the problem is, as always, for a very long time most people have been reading biblical texts as if they're the way my friend Dan McClellan puts it, as if they're univocal, as if they're all speaking with one voice. So this looks like a contradiction, but I think in actual fact, this is reflective of a very old notion of how the universe, the cosmos, and the gods operated. They were a little bit capricious. They would often say things and then do the opposite. They could not be depended on to know perfectly, to forecast the future with precision, and they were intensely emotional. Like
they were much closer to Dillahunty's what was the analogy he used? The mafia boss, right? They were a lot closer to that mafia boss analogy. So I do agree with you there, Kev, but I do want to point out that so many theists today don't really view it that way. Like from our point of view, where we're looking at it like, it's at the time that it was like written or compiled or whatever, we're going to have a different perspective on these texts than theists today that do take it as univocal. They do take it as having this one consistent message throughout, which is kind of the thing that Aaron was pointing out to those people who do believe that.
And
to the people,
I'm sorry to interject. I'm just seeing the comments piling up. A lot.
They are indeed.
They are piling up. Wow, Peter, what a dick.
in all fairness,
you knew that well.
There's a very important one in there. At least,
there is.
In there.
Money wise,
just one.
Yeah.
Money wise.
Okay, so Bryce Barnett says, I watched the entirety of Joseph Smith / Great Bryce and Blasphemers Bible. Hope you enjoy those watch hours for this show. Are you going to add an honest Christian, or is that an oxymoron? That actually leads to a question I was about to ask Kip. Kip, have you done any collaborative efforts with Dan McClellan?
Oh yeah.
He does them all the time. It's like you don't even watch the channel.
Once a month, dude. On my channel.
I don't have time to watch anybody else's stuff because I'm inundated. I don't know how other people who do the same thing that I do have time for couples tennis or for video games or whatever else the fuck that they do. I don't have. There's this thing of time. I don't have it. Right? I just don't. So I'm sorry I can't watch anybody else's shit, but that sounds like a good show. So if you want to promote anything that you and Dan McClellan have done, that'd be great.
Every second Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, I'm on with my friends Dr. Dan McClellan, Dr. Joshua Bowen, Dr. Jennifer Bird, and Dr. Matthew Monger. We do a show called Diablo Critics, and it's a pile of fun.
It sounds like it. I would really I hope that I can make the time to do that because that sounds good.
Maybe we can just get Dan on this show, and that would be like literally the most honest version of a Christian we could get.
Wouldn't it be?
Does he identify as a Christian?
Listen, he's
a Mormon, right?
Yep.
I have seen so much of his stuff reposted by atheists because he's quite accurate, and we like that. But yeah, I mean, the last attempt we had to involve a Christian, he was a little too willing to sacrifice his children, and we're not really comfortable with that. Also, he didn't have anything to contribute besides, scholarship is So,
yeah. That's not entirely true. That's not entirely true. He did point out wherever Jesus is in the Old Testament. You keep
true, of course, yeah.
Oh, hey, listen. For anyone who watched my stream this last week, you know the answer to this question. How do you get Jesus into the Old Testament? How do you find him? How do you find Jesus in the Old Testament?
I don't know.
Yeah, you have to put him in there. That's how you find him.
I was going to say shoehorn. I guess shoehorn would have been a correct answer.
Yes.
I was expecting like a punchline, but no, that's just accurate. Okay.
And Joshua has the same name.
So then Matthew K comments, says, panel, how are Nivi?
No, I think Aaron should try to.
Yeah. Let's let Aaron try.
Okay, go ahead.
Nivi'im and Ketuvim pronounced. Well, just exactly like I just did.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's fine.
Yeah. And if you want to do it with an Ashkenazi accent, then it's Nevi'im and Kesuvim.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
Corrupt.
It's not corrupt. I mean, it's not more accurate, but the fact that it preserves two different sounds when you only have one for two different letters, even if they're maybe the wrong sound.
Whoa! Are we about to have a Jewish Bloods Crips war on our hands?
Let's not talk about which tribe is superior. Let's move on to the next question.
Sailman offers $4.99 and says, "Hey, Aaron, do you ever plan on doing a video with Kurgan? And what is your favorite Motorhead song? Mine is Born to Raise Hell." Okay, my favorite my favorite Motorhead song was Killed by Death for a long time, but then it became Orgasmatron. Yes, I'm going to be doing a video with Kurgan. Kurgan is currently reading all 920 pages of the what is that manifesto?
The Communist Manifesto?
Project 2025.
Project 2025.
Oh.
Yes. Kurgan is attempting to read the entire 920 pages of that, and then we're going to have a discussion. But Kurgan is my best friend. He's a biker, tattooist, motorcycle mechanic in Phoenix, but the man is so knowledgeable that he's a complete surprise when you know what he does for a living, but then you talk to him, you're like, wow, dude, this guy knows shit. So he's a departure from stereotypes. Let's put it that way.
My favorite Motorhead song is "The Game."
Someone's already done a video where they've done a deep dive into Project 2025 on just the urbanism and transit parts, and it's by City Nerd. I think people might know that channel, and it's Project 25 as bad for cities as you think it is.
I mean, there is nothing. I can't think of a single evil thing that is not in that document, as far as I understand it. It's like they thought Gilead was the fucking goal.
They literally have a line in there where it's like, oh, we have our the transit in this country or whatever, the people in charge, they care too much about safety, and that's a problem.
Which sounds an awful lot like a certain billionaire in a homemade submarine going to go see the Titanic. I don't believe in safety standards. Oh, good to know. How deep are we now?
I mean, maybe it's true for us, but yeah, never mind that.
Then the unlucky legume offers $100. Thank you so much. I mean, because boy, do I need it. Shit is so tight. So thank you. I was discussing this chapter with a friend from work earlier this week. She said the genocide was justified. Oh, that's a song lyric. Genocide is justified. She said that because the Amalekites were Nephilim.
What? Were they?
Magic. Oh, you
Wait
know
a
what?
minute.
That is a popular. Oh God, I almost forgot about
Hold
this.
on, just a
That
second.
is a popular trope
Wait.
in evangelical Christianity, and I don't know
Sure.
the origin of it.
First,
But I read-
wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. First, I thought that the Amalekites were part of the Sea People. Now
They
they're
are part of the
Nephilim?
sea people, right?
And
The sea people. I mean,
are
the
Nephilim.
heavens, the
The
water
Nephilim
above the
came from
firmament.
Atlantis. Someone get the spirit science guy. The Nephilim came from Atlantis. This is my canon now. But genuinely, this is a trope that I remember in evangelical fiction that they give to kids. There was this set of like kid archaeologists or whatever, and one of them featured this like descendants of Amalekite, and the sign that they were descended from the Nephilim was that they had 6 fingers on their right hand. And I think Count Rugen should sue them for copyright infringement, but I digress. I don't know where this trope came from. Genuinely, I would really be interested
It's
to know.
definitely
I'll
not.
see if
I
I
don't
can
think it's
figure
a
it out
Jewish
later.
thing. There's nothing Jewish about the
Not a recent
Amalekites
Jewish thing,
being
certainly.
Nephilim
It's
or anything. The Amalekites
No.
are supposed to be bad because they ambushed the Israelites on the way from
Yeah.
Egypt. Like they
that's
were
what the text says. Yeah.
There's like an analogy given where like when you have a hot bath and everyone's afraid to go inside, and then the first person to go in, he'd make burn himself, but he cools the water down for everyone else. So it's like Amalek attacked them, and therefore it made everyone else think that it was okay to attack. So that's a really bad thing, and that's why they had to be destroyed. But then there is a tradition though that Haman
Yes.
is a descendant of Amalek.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
he's described as the Agagite.
Yeah, Gagite,
That's right.
which
In
is the
Esther.
king that we mentioned.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
though he dies.
The
Right.
the writers in the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls are also still super pissed about the Amalekites. So
They are
they equate they say that the Amalekites, the Romans are actually the descendants of the
Oh.
Amalekites.
Not.
Yeah.
I thought Romans are supposed to be Edomites.
I mean,
Nope.
I think
Yeah.
Jews ascribe
That's
the
like a later
Amalekites to
idea.
I think
Whoever they
Jews
hate, right? It's
Yeah,
just,
whoever they hate. It was the Romans,
just-
Christians, I believe, Germans, etc., Nazis.
And
So-
the traditional Jewish commentary on why they had to kill the animals and how any survivors happened is because they were magicians who could transform themselves into animals.
Yeah.
And that's why they were supposed to
Oh,
kill all
wow.
the animals, but they didn't kill all the animals, and
Wild.
somebody got away, and therefore Amalek was not exterminated. Something like that.
Well,
I like that
and
version.
according to Saul, they were going to kill the animals just a little more ceremonially and officially to Yahweh, as opposed to in the giant pile of burning everything as a mass human sacrifice to Yahweh, which is just so delightful. Love that. So
Well, listen,
Okay,
I wonder.
so
I actually wonder.
to continue that same comment, because I wasn't finished with it. It's wild how Christians will create whole new stories that aren't even hinted at in the text to make the Bible more palatable.
Yeah.
Sometimes less.
Whoever wrote that must have been here for the episodes with Pete Down.
yeah.
Yeah.
See, the thing is, yeah, that's kind of how they have to
That's-
not just make the Bible more palatable, but in a lot of cases, that's how you get rid of contradictions.
Yeah.
You got oh shit, what's the word for it? You got to diatessor on it. So you basically have to take all the different accounts and stitch them together in a way that makes sense, even though none of them say that thing.
Darling, it's called a retcon. Let's stop dignifying with this with scholarly terms.
No,
It's
the
a
diatesseron. The diatesseron. So how was it? Was it the 3rd century or 2nd century? I forget when Tatian wrote or when he was around. But so yeah, there's guy Tatian. He was like, hey, look, all these there are all these gospels that have kind of contradictory accounts. I'm gonna write like basically like a combination of all these that make sense of them. So he kind of put them all together into this one big story, and that's Tatian's Diatessaron. That was very early on that they started doing that kind of stuff.
Very cool name, though. Okay, Sable Eagle says maybe God doesn't have free will. That'd be awkward, wouldn't it?
Well, apparently you can't have free will and be and not have any sin. So either God is fully capable of evil, or he doesn't have free will. But shut up, special pleadings. So never mind.
God makes plans, and quantum entanglements ruin them. So
he both regrets and doesn't regret anointing Saul.
I don't know, just
Schrodinger's God.
Like the randomness that there is, like God even doesn't know what's happening.
I love that both is and isn't thing. You remember the guy that I brought up last week that said that, you know, a few thousand people saw the sun come below the clouds?
Sure.
While billions of people did not see. So arguing with this guy over whether the sun moved, I finally got him to concede that some people saw a ball of light moving around, whether it was the sun or not. So I got him to consider, because I had to explain to him how absolutely ridiculous it would be for the sun, being 109 times the diameter of the earth, to come down to the earth. I had to explain to him what that would look like, and how that would, how everybody everywhere else would completely not miss that.
Really not.
I mean, they would miss it, because
we would all be dead. So the planet would be an inferno.
But there's no way you could shove the sun under the clouds.
I'm guessing he doesn't actually know what an atmospheric phenomenon is in any sense.
Oh, but he knows that we don't care about truth, God's truth. But anyway, the next comment is as dark a day.
Come back.
As dark a day, which I love how nerdy that name is. I've heard the original Hebrew used different word/names for God, where the English differentiates between the Lord, God, etc. So I'm curious, what is the original of the Lord God? And I'm seeing that Dr. Kip has been disconnected. This seems like a question tailored for him.
I know.
The Hebrew Bible mostly uses two names for God. There are others, but it uses very often Elohim and Jehovah, Yahweh, however you want to pronounce it.
The Tetragrammaton.
Yeah. And that's the one that gets translated as Lord or Almighty when they're put together. Because a lot of times the Hebrew will have like which I can't remember what order it is, but you might have like Elohim.
Adonai.
Elohim,
Adonai.
I think you might have like Elohim, Yehovah together.
Adonai, Yehovah, Elohim.
You have to say Yehovah, Elohim. Yeah, sorry.
And there's a lot of El.
So you're not going to say God.
Yeah,
Shaddai as well.
Yeah.
So instead of God, you say the Lord God.
It sounds weird if you put it that way. There's basically
Almighty God
names for God as well. Because God has more than one origin, and he's kind of a, he's kind of a multi-headed monster fused together out of several gods. El, traces of El can still be seen in the Elohim, Elion.
I don't know if El is ever used as like a title for God.
No, it's because it's associated with the Elohim, which is a little more non-specific.
Yeah. Like people will use it.
Whereas Yahweh was a specific God who was then, fused in with these other ideas and tried to take over everybody. He's, the cannibal God. But yeah, when you're looking at your translation, if it says God with a capital G, that's probably some El variation, probably Elohim. Possibly,
and if it's the Lord,
probably that. And if it's the Lord, but it's all capitals, and this is where you can tell in most English translations they will do Lord in all capitals. That's the name Yahweh.
Yeah. That's what JPS does. So JPS is quite consistent. Whenever there is Yahweh comes up, it will translate as the Lord. And
but it is distinct because sometimes the words "the Lord" is used not in all capitals, just capital L, regular ORD, and that is not Yahweh.
That might be Adonai.
Something I have in common with God, I guess, because traces of ale can be found on my shirt.
In this chapter, we actually have interesting. I guess Tomer will get to it.
Yeah.
Where which one?
Netzach Israel.
Oh, I didn't even see that one. Which verse is
that? The strength, 29.
29. Yeah,
the strength of Israel, or the eternity of Israel, whatever.
The JPS calls it the glory of Israel.
Well, I hope Kip's all right.
He said that he's going outside to be out inside because it's getting hot.
Yeah, I think he didn't disconnect, but his computer disconnected while he's moving inside. He was on his laptop.
All right, I was worried that I was worried that his hedgie had become a wedgie.
Now it's a tightrope.
We didn't see the dismounting, Arn, so we don't know.
Dara O'Kane says, "Is there any misspellings or bad grammar in these old books? A misplaced comma could have changed the meaning. It's not like the Book of Mormon, which is rife with misspellings and bad punctuation."
Interesting to know that commas, like punctuation, is very recent when it comes to language.
Yeah, there's no
even spaces isn't consistent in language, like throughout history and stuff like that. Like,
I mean, misspellings, bad grammar, perhaps. There are sometimes cases where the text is corrupt, and other versions sometimes are more accurate than the Masoretic text reading, but sometimes they aren't as accurate, and we just don't know what the hell is there. For example,
cool thing about Semitic languages is like one letter can change the meaning a lot, and not changing any letters can still change the meaning if you don't know what the original meaning was. Like,
we discussed this in chapter. Yeah, we discussed it in the first verse of chapter 13. Like, nobody knows what the hell it's talking about.
Yeah. So it's not just that, but you also have to remember we're not dealing with we don't have any originals here. Yeah. So like we are dealing with copies of these things or copies of copies. So we are just trying to reconstruct what is most likely the original, and then we are translating that.
Yeah, I mean, you can think of like the Masoretic pronunciation guide as a very early commentary, right? It's a commentary telling you how to pronounce the words and what we think the meaning is. So it's not necessarily the original meaning. It's what the Masoretes thought the meaning was. So it's kind of like their own commentary. Yeah. Same thing with the Targum. It's a translation, but it's also a commentary because it's
so in principle you can have errors of a similar kind, but not specifically punctuation, because that wasn't the thing.
Yeah, punctuation.
Yeah, definitely. Really. Yeah, it's more spelling errors could cause big changes in meaning. There was one last thing. One thing I didn't get to mention, which was like this chapter has a weird thing where Saul says to Samuel, "The Lord your God, and I will worship the Lord your God." And I think that's kind of strange. I'm sure Tomer will get into it. So yeah, that's the Hebrew for that is just, Adonai or Yehovah Elohecha, like your God. But again, with the same structure, still Elohim, but just like the second person possessive form of it.
Then the next comment is the next comment is Tozian or Tozian. I'm sure Tomer knows how to say that.
Tozian, I don't know. Why me?
Wait, I'm not seeing this one.
Tozian in 724.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it says, what is that noise? God knew he would regret Saul, like I know I will regret staying up late playing video games. God is omniscient, but he has bad priorities management.
I mean, he gives a good argument.
God just sounds like an irresponsible 20-year-old who's like still trying to act like a teenager and hasn't figured out they actually need to pay their bills.
Yeah.
And then he stole his dad's job. So
you know what the problem with Saul is? He just does not listen.
I know.
He thinks for himself, and it gets him in trouble.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
all
that-
through the Bible, that's a repeated message.
You know,
I would say the moral of this chapter is, at least like from different ways, maybe you could extend it to all people, but kings specifically, they have to follow what the prophet says word by word, and they can't think for themselves and be like, oh, actually,
No
this
half
makes
measures.
no sense. Yeah.
It's very similar to all the worst cults, where obedience, absolute, blind, thoughtless, robotic obedience is the most important thing, which is always especially ironic whenever a Christian says, oh, sin is in the world because we need free will and God didn't want a bunch of robots. Well, apparently he does. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other there. As far as Saul is concerned, I mean, yeah, it's I feel bad for this guy, and he's getting slammed in the retrofitting history to build up David. They're making him look like an asshole when he's still a petty warlord, but he's
We're probably all assholes, but
yeah, I mean, a shitty petty warlord who genocides, but also I'm sure he was no worse than his contemporaries. Let's say that.
So
If there was a Saul, he wasn't a powerful king. He probably was like a city. Like a city.
Like I told you, Saul and David are low-level bandit leaders that you might struggle with in the first 5 minutes of Skyrim.
Dara O'Kane says, there is a way for God to be all-powerful and mess up. God fell when humans ate the fruit and went from all-powerful to fallible. Yeah, but the best I think you could say about God up to that point was that he was oblivious to his own fallibility. It's like one of my favorite creation myths, and Kip will probably correct me on this, but I think it was from the Nag Hammadi library, where they talk about how God was created, that God himself is a created being, that he was an abortion brought to life. This is a creation myth, and I'm pretty sure it's the Coptic Gospels and all that.
No, that's one of the Gnostics. That's one of the Gnostic sects.
That's totally out of my area.
So I don't remember one that's quite like that. I've read quite a few Gnostic texts from Nag Hammadi on my show that you don't watch, Aaron, but we've read quite a few of those.
The one where it's Sophia and the abortion, where she tries to create on her own thought without the masculine.
Right? Yeah.
But they create God.
Ends up creating the God of this world.
So she ends up creating God, and here's the funny thing, is that darkness and chaos, whatever, they create God. So now there's Yahweh exists as an abortion.
Yaldabaoth would be his name in that one.
Okay.
Yes.
So he was a reanimated abortion. And then the goddesses, plural and feminine, who created him, because he's a created being, they back away into the void, so that when God gains consciousness, he looks around and sees that there's nothing but him. And so he decided that he created himself and everything.
Okay.
Yeah, but isn't in this story he's supposed to be the bad character? So.
Well, he is the bad character, but
he is.
The thing is from the Nag Hammadi text that I've read, at least, there was they do differ in a few ways. There are a couple of them, but like there's on the creation of the world. There is there's also another gospel. I forget which one it is. It's the Gospel of Truth, maybe. That's part of it. Then there's another one. So there are slightly different stories, but the general outline is that God, the Yahweh, this one, Yaldabaoth, whatever name you want to call him, he still knows about Sophia. He doesn't know about the other pantheon, the greater gods, the higher gods, the ones who are the gods of the real realms, the true world. This is just a fake world that it's Yahweh just kind of made a little a little snow globe for himself, where he's just like playing, like he's just like a child playing and we're
Oh
like
my
his
god,
imaginary.
he's a failure to launch dude bro living in his mom's basement playing The Sims.
Basically, yeah, we're just the Sims.
I
So
just checked my notes.
the way
You're
to
right.
get-
It was Coptic Gnostics of Egypt.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Some of those older Egyptian creation myths are pretty wild too.
Okay, so yeah, go watch Lawrence's videos on which
On those,
which one is it? Is it good? Is it?
It's
there's
more
a bunch of them.
complicated,
There's a
but
bunch
yeah,
of them.
but it's really interesting. But Aaron's not wrong. He's just somewhat simplifying, and there's more than one Gnostic variation. But yeah, basically, I just every time we go over this, it occurs to me. This is why red pill content spreads so well in Christian evangelical circles, because like the pathetic guy with no self-awareness who's 100% Dunning-Kruger and calls himself an alpha, it's this dude. It's this dude. And women are like, ew, and immediately leave. This guy.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the next comment because it's hard to keep up with them all. Let me see. Vittorio says, "Hey, Aaron, why were the Nephilim created and how were they wiped from humanity?"
Just go read First Enoch.
Yeah.
That's the more interesting version. Just go read First Enoch.
Yeah.
In Genesis, it basically just says they're half angel hybrids and they're supposed to have died in the flood. But yeah, there's way more.
Yeah, I think the Jewish tradition you have, like, they're not really seen as like angel babies, but they're the mighty men of old, the heroes of before the flood, and then the giants.
It does say that the sons of God came to the daughters of men and had children by them, and they were the
Yeah, but it doesn't. I don't think they necessarily think that those were like gods or angels. I think they just see them as being like different races of human, and the way that they survived the flood was that there was one guy called which giant was it? I think it's the one that Moses killed. What's his name?
Og,
yeah. Og, the king of Bashan or whatever. Yeah. So he like clung to the side of the ark, and that's how he survived the flood. And on the other side of the ark was the behemoth, or there's another name for him, the Re'em. So those two giants were hanging off the side of the ark, just to make the story a little bit more plausible.
Plausible.
That's pretty awesome.
You know what? Maybe they saved that and let them hang there because it's like they needed someone to scoop up the bodies of drowned sinners to feed to the lions.
So then Matt White says, "Aaron, God is oblivious to their own failings. God appears on the Dunning-Kruger chart." Well, you know what the first rule of Dunning-Kruger Club is? You don't know you're in. Dunning-Kruger Club.
He isn't just on the chart; he's the whole chart.
Yeah. So God looks around, didn't see anything but himself, and decided that he was everything. Trevor and Wright says, "Would you suggest the Bible writers needed these other ethnic groups like the Philistines to form or create an in-group, out-group mentality to establish some sort of identity?"
Oh yeah, I mean this is generally how most scholars read a lot of these texts. In terms of because this is like these are from an historical perspective, right? The so-called Israelites were just Canaanites, like all the other Canaanites, and then at some point, much later in their history, they were attempting to establish or set some form of independent national identities distinct from everyone else, and then use these ancient tropes. Like many of these stories probably stem from very, very old traditions and tales that people told and wrote down, and then these were basically recast as distinguishing us from them. I mean, that's what happens to the Amalekites, right? Like they just get recast in the biblical narrative as like this treacherous, traitorous, backstabbing group of people.
If they were
Even
real.
though, well, yes, that's when we're talking about Amalekites too, right? Like we're the identification of this group. There seems to be it's based on the geography that's presented in the biblical texts, and then basically settlements that archaeologists have unearthed in these areas of the Negev and on the Transjordan tends to get assigned to the Amalekites. But yeah, importantly, the actual existence of these people is sketchy, and also there's just nobody living there until like the 8th century BCE.
Yeah, so the Amalekites supposed to be in this story are killed out. Like, was it 1200? Or
Yeah.
yes.
Well, yeah.
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 So
Okay, so we don't have any delays in jumping to 1 Samuel 16.
So
Was there
I
commentary?
not only
Of
there's
course
plenty
there
of
is.
commentary, but
Almost
before
being
we
very,
get
very, very
into
patient
a
right
whole
now.
verse by verse thing, I did want to point out a few things. So this chapter is it's usually seen as something of a stitch chapter. So where we're combining. So once we get into chapter 16, we're gonna be talking about David, and the story of David's rise officially begins. But in the meantime, they had to, they had this story about Saul. In the meantime, they had to get rid of Saul. They had to kick Saul out of the picture. So how did they do that? Easy. That's chapter 15. So I want to read to you a section from Mackenzie's paper, The Trouble with Kingship. So Saul's recruitment of soldiers in 1452 sets the stage for David's appearance in 1614 through 23. The intervening material in 15:1 through 16:13, therefore, is a later addition because it lies outside the Deuteronomist notices in 1447 through 52 and interrupts the transition to David as the focal character. This also accounts for the doublet between 13:7b through 15 and chapter 15 regarding Saul's sin and the statement in 1535 contradicted by the subsequent narrative that Samuel did not see Saul again before he died. So I think that having that contradiction in there is one of the big clues that there is something funky going on, that there was a later addition because you wanted to stitch the story of David to the kicking out of Saul. It didn't just need to flow from one kingship to another. No, instead, this time you had to kick someone out, and you had to give this this theological reason of like, hey, you got to be sure to listen to God. That's priority number one. So they wrote this intervening section for chapter 15 to kind of account for that theological discrepancy. So that was my comment for this.
That's a good observation, and I think we've tried to point out where it seems either multiple sources have been stitched or part of the story was moved to create, fix gaps in the narrative or whatever. But yeah, this is very clearly, it's put this way for a purpose, which is to justify why David can totally be anointed king while Saul is still king, and it's not wrong at all.
And now we're in.
Is that a record?
No, actually, this episode is going into the Hall of Shame of episodes where it took an hour to start a commentary, like Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 6.
We had so much audience interest that we had comments that we
I blame
had to
Peter.
read.
Yeah, Peter.
Always my fault.
Okay.
No problem.
How very dare people be interested in our program? The goal.
Yeah, but
yesterday.
Yeah, but we have a very limited time,
Okay.
And
I think we're pacing it. We don't want to do 16s. We don't want to do 17. So
we want to do 16, but I think Tomer may wish to read his commentary.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start on verse 3. Tsumura comments, R.P. Gordon notes that the institutions of the ban, quote-unquote, like the whole concept of the Holy War, is far removed from the Christian code of the New Testament, and must be seen in the context of the provisional morality of the Old Testament, end quote. But how shall a Christian slay the Amalekite? He can find the answer, quote, in keeping with the broad concept of spiritual warfare, quote-unquote, in the New Testament. Compare Ephesians 6:12. Such an institution certainly reminds us that, quote, it is fearful thing to oppose the living God, end quote, according to Baldwin. Just wanted to include that because...
Nice.
Yeah.
Just get that book.
Oh.
You know, the book, Everything I Don't Like Is Woke, Everything I Don't Like Is Amalek. Yeah.
Yeah. God is a petty bitch. Confirmed.
Everything I Don't Like Is Nephilim.
Yeah. Now on verse 4, at Telaim. In Hebrew, it's Batelaim. The word Telaim can denote a place name, as we see in the Peshitta, Kimchi, Ibn Kaspi, and modern commentators. McCarter, Klein, and Bar-Efrat identify it as Telem, found in Joshua 15:24, located in the Negev, in the territory of southern Judah. Septuagint reads Gilgal, for some reason. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
sorry.
The
there's
original Greek.
yeah. There's also another interpretation where Telaim literally means with sheep. So
I'm
he
about to
counted
get
them
to
with
that.
sheep. Oh, okay. I thought you were
Oh.
going to the next verse already.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Don't step on his lines, Isaac.
Are you moving on to the next verse already?
No. Okay, let me
Okay,
read,
finish your
please.
verse. All right.
The word telaim can also denote lambs. Thus, Vulgate reads, numbered them as lambs, and Targum reads, mustered them by the lamps of Passover. Interestingly enough. Van Staldeiner Solman comments, neither ancient Jewish literature nor modern literature on the Targum provide an explanation of this translation. Smolar and Aberbach suggest that the rendering paschal lambs might have been reminiscent of the way Cestius Gallus collected taxes in 66 CE, one kidney of every paschal lamb. In that way, Saul could establish an army by counting the families and not the people. End quote. Rashi wrote that Saul ordered each one to take a lamb from the king's flock, and afterwards he counted the lambs, since it is forbidden to count the Jewish people, according to Genesis 32:12. This interpretation is favored by Kara, Abravanel, and Gersonides, who notes that when David does his count in 2 Samuel 24, his troops were struck by a plague.
Yeah, that's why
that one gets a little funkier too, especially when you compare the version in Chronicles.
Yeah.
And that's
I'd
that's
like
why
to.
Go for it.
I was just gonna say, because this stuff is kind of fun. I'd like to point out what I think is an interesting feature of literary artistry within this text. So in verse 1, Samuel says, and this is something I think is significant too. The verb shema, which means to listen, can mean to obey or just to hear, is used a lot in this story, and I think that's significant. But in verse 1 it says, Samuel says to Saul, so now shema, listen to the voice of the words of Yahweh. And then he says, I am pukadti, I am avenging that which Amalek did in Israel. And then when he's finished, and Saul in verse 4 is putting together the army, it says that Saul Vaishama, he's summoned, which is interestingly the same verb, the people, and he Vayivkadem, which again is the same. It's there's this repeated use of pakad, and it's in that instance in particular, it's not clear exactly what it means. It probably means something like putting troops together, but yeah,
JPS translates it as mustered and enrolled.
Yeah, but that's fun.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Okay. On verse
And you can
6.
tell that this was
sorry.
you can tell that the scribes chose those words on purpose, because Vayishama is a weird way to say summoned.
Yeah, it
And
really is.
Like you probably would have used something like Yizek, something like that. Yizek, which is more meaning to announce or to bring everyone together.
Yeah. Now on verse, I think I'll do 5. The word translated to, set an ambush in the ravine. The word translated to set an ambush is vayarev. Most other translations, Kimchi, Ibn Kaspi, and modern commentators, take the verb to mean set an ambush or lay in wait, reading vaye'arev. Other traditionals, like Rashi, Kara, and Gersonides, wrote that vayarev means he fought, reading from the root resh yud bet. Rashi notes that Chazal, in Talmud Yoma 22b, wrote, quote, concerning the valley, he argued and concluded that if for the sake of one life, the Torah said to decapitate a calf in the valley, how much more for the sake of these lives? If man has sinned, what have the animals sinned? End quote. Peshita also reads from the root Reshut Bet, he judged in the valley.
He rationalized that he would spare the animals to use for sacrifice. So yeah. I'm not sure exactly how that. I guess he's saying like, just like if God wants us to decapitate a calf to atone for the killing of a person that we don't know who killed them, even more so we should have some animals as a. This is supposed to be like his logic of saying that, we need to separate some of these animals to sacrifice for their sake. Something like that. But yeah, it's a bit reading into it, I think.
As a sin offering for we don't know if we committed a sin, but we're doing a safety offering like Job kind of a thing.
Yeah, something about man can sin, but animals can't. So that the only reason to kill them would be as some sort of atonement. So it makes sense to sacrifice them rather than just killing them. I think maybe that's the logic.
Yeah. Don't waste life. Use it for your blood magic, not just random slaughter.
Yeah. On verse 6, you showed kindness to all the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt. It is not clear what this refers to. Bar-Efrat notes that according to Judges 1:16 and 4:11, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, was a Canaanite, although Exodus 18:1 and Numbers 10:29 has him as a Midianite, who visited the Israelites at Sinai during the wilderness and taught them judicial manners, as we see in Exodus 18 verses 30 through 27. This view is favored by traditional commentators like Rashi, Kimchi, and Gersonides. Klein notes Frank E. Fensham's opinion that the mention of chesed, loyalty or kindness, indicates that there was a defensive or non-aggressive alliance between Israel and the Canaanites. Tsumura, however, writes that there is not enough ground for postulating this. On verse 8, Agag, king of Amalek. Agag is mentioned only in this chapter and in Numbers 24:7, wherein Balaam prophesied, quote, their king shall rise above Agag, their kingdom shall be exalted, end quote. Several commentators like Bar-Efrat and Abramski take this prophecy as hinting to Agag in our chapter. Tsumura writes that Agag is either a name or a title, like Pharaoh or Achish. Later, Haman, the main antagonist in the book of Esther, is called the Agagite, which might indicate that Agag has become almost, quote, the type of the enemy of Yahweh and his people, end quote, according to Herzberg. On verse 9, Saul and the army spared Agag. Although Samuel ordered Saul not to spare any of the Amalekites in verse 3, Saul violates the order, sparing Agag and the best of his livestock. Abravanel suggested that Agag was very handsome, which disdained Saul from killing him. Klein suggested that either Saul wished to make some kind of a deal with the Amalekites, or that he wished to use Agag as a trophy of war, as we see in 1 Samuel 18:6-7. Saul later states that he kept the livestock for sacrifice, in verses 15 and 21, but Samuel suggested a more selfish motive, in verse 19. Garsiel and Bar-Efrat wrote that Saul acted by greed, separating between the best spoil and the less valued one. Thus,
okay,
Saul
so
was motivated.
Confused. he spared the guy's life because he was so handsome, and he spared the sheep for
Sacrificing.
the
Sacrifice.
same reason.
No.
Yeah, same reason.
Just a second. I'll be right back.
I mean, it does
Oh.
imply from the verse that the ones that they chose to spare were the ones that were plump and good. And
It's
worth
plunder, right? Like I think
Yeah.
the implication here is that they were holding back plunder, which is an absolute no when it comes to cherem offerings, this special type of killing, I guess, in this sort of holy war, right? I've talked about this a little bit, and I've started to use as a definition the idea of indiscriminate killing as what cherem is when these texts describe ancient Near Eastern war tactics. There's always the sense of defeating a people and holding back plunder. This is why you're going to war, right? You're going to war against a certain people because you're trying to enrich yourself and increase your holdings and this sort of thing. And this is how the army gets paid too, right? Through the plunder, whatever that the valuables that they take from whoever they defeated. And these are goods, but these are also livestock or like people to enslave. And the difference between that and cherem warfare is the idea is that this is a form of such extreme devotion that you don't hold back anything for yourself. You don't keep anything. It all belongs to the god. And within like this ancient theory and economy of sacrifice, the way to get things from the natural realm into the divine realm is to destroy them or to kill them. So by slaughtering everyone and everything, you're basically sending it all to the god, in this case to Yahweh. So it's like it's an extreme form of devotion where you're not selecting the best stuff from the plunder when you go into battle. You're actually just you're literally sacrificing it all, because it all belongs to the god.
It's kind of similar to like when you're talking about the animal sacrifices in the temple. There's the one sacrifice where nobody gets to eat anything from it.
Yes.
Right? It's complete. It's a holocaust. It's a completely burnt offering, and so it's kind of like you might have. It seems to be that if you would install this as part of your religion regime, it's a form of control, right? Normally you'd be like, oh, we have soldiers, they go to war, and they get a bit of payment at the end. Or you might have another degree where the soldiers don't get anything because they have to be devoted, but they're going to make sacrifices where the priests, the people in charge, end up benefiting themselves. But here it's like nobody gets anything.
Nobody gets anything.
We are so devoted to God. There's no like ulterior motives. We don't,
administration steps in, and then there's no exclusive rights for anybody. Nobody wins, Ripley.
Yeah,
Nobody
I'll
wins.
say one other thing that's really important with the idea of cherem is the word itself, right? Clearly has a cultic context. Like throughout the book of Leviticus, there's instances where the same verb is used for actions performed by the priest in like the tabernacle / temple or whatever. So one of the other functions of cherem is purification too. This is all about cleansing the territory, removing all the impurities to make it livable, and to make it a space where God can dwell, God can stay. And I'll say one other thing about this, which I think is intensely interesting, and it has something to do with this text specifically. So we know, or we suspect, that cherem warfare was something that was actually practiced at one time in the history of the Canaanites. The Mishe Stele, the Moabite stone, which is 9th century, uses this same term, and well, I'll read this to you here. So this is from a monument that was erected by Mesha, who was the king of the Moabites in the 9th century. And at one point, he's describing his victories over Ahab in particular, and his allies. And it says the god of Mesha is Chemosh, the god of the Moabites. Yeah, Mesha, by the way, makes an appearance in 2 Kings chapter 3. And the Mesha Stele is probably describing events that are related to that, which is pretty interesting. But anyways, here's part of what it says. He says, "And Chemosh said to me, 'Go take Nebo from Israel.' So I went by night, and I fought against it from the break of dawn until noon, taking it and slaying all 7,000 men, boys, women, girls, and probably pregnant women. For I had devoted them to destruction. I had committed them as a cherem offering." Sorry, I lost my place. For Ashtar Chemosh, the consort of Chemosh. And this part of the text, I think, is kind of interesting to what's going on in the Saul story here in chapter 15. It says, "And I took from there and unfortunately the text breaks off, so we don't see what's in there. So there's a vakat, there's a lacune, a break in the stone, and then it continues, of Yahweh, dragging them before Chemosh." So it kind of looks like he has. So it says he's killed everyone as a cherem offering, but then he's brought something back to present to Chemosh, and I have to look into this a little bit more closely, but the language that's used there, I think, could suggest that these might be people. So I've often wondered if what Saul is doing is just an element of this practice of cherem warfare, like he says, where he killed everything and everyone, but very much like Misha, he took something back with him in order to make like a special offering to Chemosh. So when Saul actually says, I held back these people, like I think it's presented in the text that he's just being a greedy bastard and a bit of a coward, capitulating to the will of the people, right? But I do wonder if there is a kernel of truth and tradition to this, whereby part of the practice of actual cherem was a special devotion or a special offering back in the house of the god. Okay, I'm done. I'm going to shut up now.
No, I think actually Lawrence and I were discussing this in one of the previous chapters, similarly, where we were talking about whether or not it might have been either the priests of Yahweh, the king of Yahweh, or possibly the image taken to be like degraded before the god, your own god, or like we won, ha ha ha. It's symbolic, but yeah, it honestly, it reminds me of, some Chinese philosophers would say, if you're going to have a war, just have a plain selfish war. Just be honest. Because if you do it for just plain selfish reasons, you're not going to salt the earth you want to plant. You're not going to burn down all the buildings you can use. You're not going to slaughter all the people you can use as labor. You will kill some people. It is a war. But it doesn't have to be like this. It is only for religious and ideological reasons, where you are convinced that they are evil and you are the pinnacle of virtue. And God wants you to burn everything so that he can feel safe, because he needs a safe space of corpses, burnt corpses, apparently, that you get this absolutely horrific, beyond all necessity. And again, it's just another iteration of, without religion, good people will do good things and bad people will do bad things. But to get good people to do truly evil things, you need religion.
Can I continue? Yeah. I see you, Aaron, on that same verse. Yeah. We're still on verse. Actually, I haven't finished the
9,
commentary. Yeah, Tsumura writes that Saul interpreted the command in his own way. There. Now, on that same verse, fat calves. In the Hebrew, it's mishanim. Some derive the word from mishneh, which means double, i.e., double in meat and fat, according to Kimchi, or from the word shana, referring to 1-year-old sheep, according to Kimchi. Targum, Peshitta, and Ditrani read fatlings, possibly reading shmenim instead. This reading is favored by most modern commentators. Halot reads animals of the more highly valued second brood. Mishnim is a hatebacks.
So the idea is, so it's possibly that they just got 2 letters switched around. So instead of it being shanam, being the root, it's shaman.
Mashan.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Mashan,
Mashan
it's
is-
Mishnim, yeah.
Oh, right. Mashan, and then to make it into what it should have been would be, okay. So the first 2 letters were switched around. Okay. Yeah, which means fat, shaman.
Yeah. On verse 11, I regret. In Hebrew, nichamti. Klein notes that Yahweh's regret here is similar to his regret over creating the human race in Genesis 6, verses 6 and 7, the Yahwist's account of the flood. Tsumura calls the verbal phrase nichamti as, quote, performative perfect, end quote. The purpose of the language is both performative and emotive, but also anthropopathic. As R.P. Gordon notes, it, quote, conveys an important truth about a God who is not impassive or static, but dynamic in his interaction with his creations, end quote. Auld writes that regret in Yahweh's part is commonly stated in the Hebrew Bible as a stock formula. This regret is, quote, not over a threat of future action, but over Yahweh's past action in making Saul king, end quote. He also notes that Yahweh regrets making Saul king, although this was not previously attributed to him, but rather to Samuel in 8:22 and 12:1, or the people in 11:15. On verse 15, Saul attempts to excuse himself by stating that the troops spared the best of the livestock, even though verse 9 states that both he and the troops spared them. Moreover, he claims that the best of the livestock was meant as a sacrifice for Yahweh your God, a reading which Tsumura takes as indicating Saul's personal relationship with his God, by not speaking of our God. Saul emphasizes that his duty has been to Samuel's God, and so tries to lighten his own responsibility as the representative of the people. Kimchi, however, writes that Saul said your God in honor of Samuel and to, quote, increase his virtue, end quote. On verse 17, you were once small in your own eyes. The Hebrew Bible reads, you are small in your own eyes. In Hebrew, im katon ata be'einecha. This reading is attested in the Peshitta and is taken by some commentators like Kimchi and Klein as indicating Saul's low self-esteem. However, most commentators take it as referring to Saul's first meeting with Samuel in 9:21 and read, quote, when you viewed yourself as little, end quote. On verses 22 to 23, Klein comments, Samuel's response in verses 22 to 23 is couched in Hebrew poetry. The opening question in verse 22 specifies the accusation. What Yahweh wanted was obedience to his voice, not burnt offerings and communion sacrifices. Obedience is said to be better than sacrifice in such prophetic texts as Isaiah 1 verses 10 through 11 and 13, Jeremiah 7 verses 21 to 26, Hosea 6:6, etc. The fat around the entrails and kidneys and the fat tail of sheep were burnt up, even in the communion sacrifice. All fat belonged to Yahweh, as we see in Leviticus 3 verses 16 through 17 and 7:23 to 25. But all such ritual observance is inferior to hearkening. The accusation is further expanded by labeling disobedience as rebellion, compared to Deuteronomy 9:23 and Joshua 1:18, and equating such rebellion with the sin of divination. Divination is consistently prohibited in the Old Testament, compared to Deuteronomy 18:10 and 2 Kings 17:17. It is a practice for which the wicked nations are criticized, and for which the false prophets are strongly censored, especially Jeremiah 14:14, 27:9, Ezekiel 13:6, and 23, etc. Such disobedience is comparable to such disobedience is comparable to presumption or arrogance, and could be equated with vanity and teraphim, probably a hendites meaning evil teraphim or worthless teraphim. In some passages, teraphim seems to be a kind of household god. For example, Genesis 31:34 and 35, Judges 17:5 and 18:14. But they were apparently also a means of divine inquiry. For example, in Hosea 3:4 and Ezekiel 21:26, which is 21 in the Old Testament. By linking them with the word on, evil or worthlessness, or worthless, the author may have meant to label them idolatrous. Compare Isaiah 41:29 and Amos 5:5. Or he may be thinking by he may again be linking disobedience to divination. In a late passage, we read the teraphim utter nonsense. On, in Zechariah 10:2.
You know, I forget which passage it was. Maybe you maybe you mentioned it, but while you were talking about, you know, the sacrifice being like not as important as obedience, I don't know if it was one of the verses you mentioned, but I do remember in
prophetic text.
I would like to finish the sentence. I don't know if it was one of the verses you mentioned, but when I was going over when I was, you know, reading through it on my show, through the Bible on my show, we noticed that there was one passage that instead of just putting, you know, one above the other or something like that, the sacrifice was explicitly condemned. That God didn't want sacrifices. He didn't need them. They didn't do anything. They were useless. So I'm not sure if that was one of the ones that you mentioned, or if that was an entirely different passage. But
I mean, there's more to that. I mean, I just quoted some. The ones I quoted was Isaiah 1:11, 10 and 13, Jeremiah 7:21-26, Hosea 6:6. But there's also Amos 5:21-24, Micah 6 verses 6 through 8.
Okay, sure.
That's the one. That's the one that I think most people will recognize, and the one that that comes to my mind when I read this, mostly because it's a very, very popular campfire song that all of us used to sing when we went to Bible camp every summer.
Yeah, that was definitely all of us. Yeah.
Including these.
Some of us did this, right? Every summer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Every
but this
summer.
is like it's an interesting passage. I'll just read it here. With what shall I approach Yahweh? Do homage to God on high. I'm reading from JPS. Shall I approach him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will Yahweh be pleased with thousands of rams, with myriads of streams of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for my sins? He has told you, human being, oh man, what is good and what Yahweh requires of you. Only do justice, love goodness, walk in humility with your God, and then your name will achieve wisdom. It's kind of an interesting verse because it presumes that all of these things are normative, or at least normative / slightly idealized. Burnt offerings, calves a year old, thousands of rams, streams of oil, firstborn children.
Firstborn children.
And,
it reminds me of Saul, or it's Paul when he's writing Corinthians 13, the love poem thing, and if I surrender my body to be burned and have not love, it's like the weird Christian fetishization of torture porn and martyrdom early on, being like, if I that being the idealized thing, but still love is greater, and it's very much that same vibe.
Now on verse 27, Saul caught hold of the hem of his robe. The Hebrew Bible reads, "And Samuel turned, and he caught the corner of his robe and it tore." It is not clear if Saul tears Samuel's robe or Samuel tears Saul's robe. Although Targum preserves the ambiguity, most other translations, 4 Samuel A and Josephus in Antiquity 6:152, take Saul to be the one tearing the robe, a view held by most traditional and modern commentators. Midrash Shmuel 18:5 records some rabbis who think that Samuel tore off Saul's cloth, as a sign that whoever will tear a corner of Saul's robe would reign in his place, an act which David does to Saul in 24:20. Most modern commentators, following Ronald A. Browner, take the expression to grasp the hem as a gesture of, quote, supplication, importuning, and submission, end quote. Thus, as McCarter writes, quote, Saul grasps the skirt of his robe as a final differential plea for mercy, end quote. Van Staaldeine-Solman, however, notes that Diethelm Conrad interpreted it as a negative act, where Saul takes the official task and statutes of the prophet Samuel, an interpretation supported by David cutting the hem of Saul's robe in 24:11. Josephus takes the act as Saul wishing to detain Samuel. On verse 28, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today. Since Saul continues to be king, the word today shouldn't be understood plainly. Bar-Efrat writes that today means that soon another will be anointed as king, and the kingship of Saul will not last for long. Tsumura writes that today is used in the legal sense. The rejection is final and has already taken effect, as we see in Ruth 4 verses 9 through 10 and Psalms 2:7. On verse 29, the strength of Israel will not lie nor repent. I'm reading from the KJV. Hebrew for strength of Israel is Netzach Yisrael. The word Netzach has been variously interpreted as eternal, according to Kara, victor, according to Rashi, Ibn Kaspi, and Ditrani, triumpher, according to Vulgate, splendid, according to Pshita, etc. McCarter writes that the contradiction with verse 11, I, Yahweh, repent, seems to suggest that the phrase is a late addition to the text, penned by a redactor to whom the suggestion of a divine change of mind was unacceptable. Tsumura, however, writes, quote, in this verse, which is about the future, the main point is that God will not reverse his decision. A similar motif appears in a Sumerian lamentation, in which the god Enlil is said, quote, never to alter the word he utters, end quote. However, one should note that the meaning of a word or phrase is decided according to the context in which it appears, and the speaker who uses the word. While the root nun chet mem certainly means to change one's mind in the present context, the same verb in verses 11 and 35 refers to God's regret, quote unquote. While in the former the word is paired with the term to deceive and is used relationally, in the latter it functions emotively, expressing God's inner feeling, end quote. Oh, and just a side note, the phrase Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker is familiar with many Israelis because there was a resistance movement back in the 1910s called Nili, who operated against was a Jewish movement who operated against the Ottomans during World War I. Just to point out.
Which is an acronym for
Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. That's the acronym for it. Yeah. Now on verse 32, Agag came to him in chains. In Hebrew, Agag ma'adanot. The meaning of ma'adanot is unclear. The Septuagint reads trembling, possibly reading from the root mem ain daled, to stumble. This meaning is favored by Klein, who renders trembling and hesitant, following Lagarde, Bratcher, and Talmon. The word appears in Job 38:31 as referring to bands of the Pleiades, according to Halot. This led some commentators, like Kara, Gersonides, and Ditrani, to read in chains, a reading favored by McCarter. Targum, Aquila, and Symmachus render cheerfully, based on the word Eden, which means bliss or jewelry. Kimche explains, quote, he walked towards him as kings cheerfully do, i.e., even though he was close to death, he walked proudly. Another explanation, he walked towards him in pleasure and joy, for he chose his death over his life, end quote. The reading is favored by Bar-Efrat and Tsumura, with the former writing that Agag mistakenly thinks that the man of God will free him, or at least save his life. Ibn Kaspi took ma'adenot to mean gently, i.e., quote, walking slowly and gently as a soft and gentle king does, end quote. Oved reads very fat and trembling, and combining the Septuagint and Targum interpretations, and Peshitta omits this detail. Yeah. On that same verse, surely the bitterness of death is past. In Hebrew, achen sar mar hamavet. The phrase has been rendered as, quote, indeed the bitterness of death is past or close, end quote, according to most traditional commentators. Is death thus bitter, according to Septuagint? Doth bitter death separate in this manner, according to the Vulgate? Please, my master, death is bitter, according to Targum, etc. McCarter prefers the Septuagint and writes that the MT reading, quote, surely the bitterness of death is past, end quote, is quite inappropriate and arose from a digraphy of mar. Tsumura compares the expression with the Old Aramaic mar chaya, the bitterness of life, which is a euphemism for the bitterness of death. On verse 34, Samuel put Agag to death. The word translated to put to death is vayeshasef, which is a hapax.
This is 33, right?
33, yes. Did I say 30 something else?
You said 34, I think.
I meant 33, sorry. Some commentators like Ibn Kaspi and Halot compare the root shin samech pet with shin tzadik pet to separate. Rashi renders, cut him into 4 pieces. Septuagint renders, he slew, which Auld writes that it may have been influenced by 2 sibilants following by a P in the unfamiliar Hebrew. McCarter writes that the Septuagint reading uses a verb which denotes sacrificial butchering. Since Agag is killed in the presence of Yahweh, he suggested that Agag suffered a ritual death, which was a punishment for covenant violation, and that, quote, perhaps we can conclude that the crime of the Amalekites described in verse 2 was considered all the more heinous because it involved violation of a covenant with Israel of which we have no knowledge, end quote. Tsumura, however, notes Herzberg's opinion that Samuel's action, quote, takes the event from the sphere of sacrifice into that of the ban, end quote. Samuel completes the performance of the ban, quote, of the Amalekites, devoting Agag to Yahweh.
You know, we've seen this a couple times, right, where they cut them up into pieces, right? There was obviously the concubine, and then there was, I think, a little bit after that, was there an oxen or something like that was cut up into?
Yeah, Saul did
Yeah.
that to summon the army in the same way as the concubine, but obviously less gross because he sent animal parts instead of.
Sure. I'm wondering if this would be related to that, or maybe not, because it's not as explicit as those. Well, I don't know.
Could not tell you.
Yeah. And finally, verses 34 to 35, Klein comments, the leading actors in the story went to their respective homes. That Samuel did not see Saul until the day of his death seems to point forward to chapter 28 and the incident with the witch of Endor. How the narrator or redactor understood the contradiction this creates with 19 verses 18 to 24 has not been explained. Samuel mourned for Saul, just a second.
All right.
That's such quite a short time to mourn someone.
Is it though?
I'm just gonna mourn you just a second.
Wait, I'll continue. Yeah, sorry about that. Samuel mourned for Saul, which is also the note on which the next chapter begins, as in 16:1. This verb mourn, evel, in the Hitpa'el, is used for Ezra's mourning over the faithlessness of the exiles, as we see in Ezra 10:6. Samuel's mourning replaced his earlier anger in verse 11. Yet the saddest line in the whole history of Saul is formed by verse 35b. Yahweh felt sorry that he had made Saul king over Israel, end quote.
So there are no more impediments to reading 16?
Yeah, sorry, my mother is doing stuff, and she needed to
I hate when
get
that
to my room.
happens.
Yeah, she's organizing stuff. Sorry.
Look at us having families. The audacity. Now,
I
God
know
just
Yeah.
seems to be in his feelings a lot.
It's like, lift your legs. I need to hoover over here.
Yeah.
I'm doing a stream.
Oh, now
So
for
we
some
are moving. Okay,
Christians.
go ahead.
Christians, it's
Oh.
important. We needed
Oh,
a
yeah.
P-Town replacement, yeah. So John of Damascus. Wait a minute. Am I in the? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I was confused a bit. So John of Damascus wrote that. What the hell is it? Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. Yeah, Saul's consequence for tearing Samuel's cloak illustrates that the church is to be governed not by political leaders, but by spiritual ones.
That turned out well.
Yeah.
What do you know? What century was that guy writing?
It was 7th, 8th.
Ah, okay, interesting.
CE.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
Just in case you thought.
Yeah. And Augustine wrote that Saul's rejection, which applied to his posterity since he reigned as long as David did, signified that the Christ would not come from his lineage. Following a translation of the Greek, it is understood that this figuratively represents the tearing of the kingdom from quote-unquote Israel in the New Testament with Christ's advent.
What did I say? The Jews
God
are
regretted
Saul,
Saul.
the Christians are David, because Jesus.
Like, God regretted Saul's posterior? What was that?
Oh, God.
Oh, you know what? He does have a thing for that ass. I mean, let's face it. You notice how God gets really wound
saw
up
David
in
and
hot
he was
young
like-
men, and then they disappoint him by doing something he didn't want, and he reacts very poorly. I think he needs to come to terms with his closeted homosexuality.
Yes,
He
I was
saw
going to
David.
kill you. I was going to kill you, but look at those legs.
Damn. You want that cake?
All right, are we done with the Christian opinions?
Yeah.
Who's going to read
Okay.
the 16?
Of course.
But I do love when Tomer throws in the Christian thing, because it's just, there's such contempt.
It's also very, I don't know what the word is, like childish almost. I don't know if that's the right words.
Indeed.
Infantile. Yeah.
Yeah, infantile. That's the right word.
The Christian commentary is always wanting.
It's copium, to put a modern term on it. It's heavy copium, and it's cringe because it's so, there's no respect for the original context, for the original people. Colonialism is so Christian because you have to believe that the God of the Bible and what he actually meant better than any Jews, and that's really stupid. It's really freaking stupid to think that.
Well, I mean, a lot of the traditional Jewish commentaries are also like not that they don't think that their text is that comes from a different time with a different message. Their tradition that they kind of see it as this, I don't know, like it's always
the Jews
been like
have
this
sometimes come
well.
up with some explanations that are as crazy as some of the Christian commentators.
They're actually
and we've gone
finding, the
over
thing is
them.
they're reading the text and they're finding issues like logical issues, and they're trying to fix those logical issues by explaining them away. And the Christians are more like, where is Jesus in this? We need to find Jesus. How do we find Jesus? And they just like make up some rubbish, and it's very silly.
Yeah.
They thought it was a Where's Waldo book, except it was Jesus. You just need to put him in the stripy shirt. You'll have better luck finding him.
How do I turn
Right.
this reading into something that I can preach at people?
All right, I'm going to move on to 16
Listen.
if we're good.
I'm sorry, and this is totally irrelevant to the point. Like totally irrelevant.
Oh, okay.
Tomer's gonna hate this.
Yeah,
But
Peter, get the
as-
things ready.
As a hockey god atheist, I feel like I'm having a religious experience in this very moment, and I just have to share because I have been trying for the last 10 or 15 minutes to type disparaging comments about the Edmonton Oilers into the chat, and it will not let me do it. And it pisses me off. So
It's well,
might-
I respect your BC pride. I think
it's
we
not
can't
BC
really
pride.
attack our own during the Olympics. I think
I saw your message
gods
where
of
you
the
said
internet.
that you can't, your comments aren't working,
No,
but I haven't
they're
seen
not.
any other
And
comments.
I've tried it. I have
Doc-
tried it in yes, and it's sorry. I'm just
Dr. Kip, there might be a
it's almost enough.
perfectly reasonable explanation for this, because there's a 350-year-old Christian in chat who has talked to both the devil and God, so they might be screwing up the comments a bit. I'm not kidding.
Oh,
Well,
no.
as impressive as that might be,
So it's
I'm
not
not
the hockey
kidding.
gods. Is that what you're telling me? I can continue to doubt the existence of the hockey gods.
I'm pretty sure it's just like the words you're using are so strong that YouTube's not allowing them. But also, let's just all agree that hockey is bad. All right, let's
Whoa, whoa,
do some
whoa,
next-
whoa!
Shots fired!
Burn him!
no.
Shots
Burn the
fired!
witch!
I don't think
Shun
any
the
American.
non-believer!
I mean,
I
I
don't
already
think any-
hated you, Lawrence. But
You
wow,
just
don't-
insulted
this is
the
escalated.
Canadianism.
quickly.
I don't think
Oh
American
God.
USAians
You
can
you
say
do
disparage any sport. I'm sorry.
That's true, considering what they had to do to football. But sir, I remind you, we are responsible for more than half of the Geneva Conventions, because it's never a war crime the first time.
Yeah, but no one ever
Watch your
listens to
mouth.
those.
And this is
Watch
when
your mouth.
Canadians realized they need to build a wall.
I just think we need to put up giant signs, no guns allowed, free abortions for all, and all marriages must be queer, and then hopefully that will repel the necessary
I live
Americans.
like 6 kilometers from the border, and we actually have a very, very impressive 150 centimeter ditch that separates our great nations.
I remember that ditch. Yeah. Well, maybe we can recommission the old chicken cannon from Air Farce and do a kind of a Yeetus the fetus cannon if they start to invade. I'm sure nothing will freak them out like getting hit in the face with fetus bits.
Shall we?
Yes, please.
The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I am sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. I have chosen one of his sons to be king." Because God's choices are always wise, and he never makes mistakes. But Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me." The Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, 'I have come to sacrifice to the Lord.' Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate." Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They asked, "Do you come in peace?" Samuel replied, "Yes, in peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come to the sacrifice with me." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. When they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, "Surely the Eliab
for you.
Eliab. Okay.
Okay.
Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart."
It's X-ray vision.
Then Jesse called Abinadab and had him pass in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, "The Lord has not chosen this one either." Jesse then had Shammah pass. But Samuel said, "Nor has the Lord chosen this one." Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, "The Lord has not chosen these." So he asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" There's still the youngest," Jesse answered. "He is tending the sheep." Samuel said, "Send for him. I will not sit down until he arrives." So he sent for him and had him brought in. He was glowing with health and had a fine appearance and handsome features.
He was
Then
ready.
the Lord said, "Rise and anoint him. This is the one." So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Samuel then went to Ramah.
I'd
Now-
like some young.
Yeah, a little bit. And you're going to go meet somebody. So they bring this kid up, and a guy pours a thing of oil over his head.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to start a fight.
I'm sure there's a bit of spreading the oil around, you know.
Oh, so he wanted to get the youngest of his sons and have him rub oil all over him for the Lord, because the Lord sees what's inside.
Yeah, I bet he does. I bet he looks really deep.
Yeah, filthy people.
It's not our fault God is a perp. We're just noticing it.
Now, the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. An evil spirit from the Lord. Oh, we're going to talk about that.
We get that. We get that a lot.
Mhm.
Especially for Samuel. Not Samuel, Saul, sorry.
Saul. Yeah.
Yeah,
Saul gets it a lot.
Actually, the whole of the Deuteronomistic history has it in multiple places, and
Yeah.
it's we've had it a couple times before, I think.
Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy
It's
13 verses 2
quite-
to 4.
yeah,
and Judges.
It's very interesting. This,
Judges
this
9:23.
evil
I'll get to
spirit.
that.
God will also send lying spirits at various times to kings and
That too, yeah.
prophets because he's very, very honest and forthright.
And a bit of a dick. Okay, so Saul's attendants said to him, "See, an evil spirit from God is tormenting you." How would we see that? Let our Lord command his servants here to search for someone who can play the lyre. He will play when the evil spirit from God comes on you, and you will
I
feel
know that
better.
club.
So Saul said to his attendants, "Find someone who plays well and bring him to me." Oh, man, I can't wait to discuss this. One of the servants answered, "I have seen a son of Jesse of Bethlehem who knows how to play the lyre. He is a brave man and a warrior. He speaks well and is a fine-looking man," because we're all about good-looking men in this book.
Don't we all?
"And the Lord is with him."
I think it's just Isaac and I.
Then Saul sent messengers to Jesse and said, "Send me your hunkiest dudes. Send me your son David. Send me your son David, who is with the sheep. I want to offer him another option." So Jesse took a donkey. Oh boy! Loaded with bread, a skin of wine, and a young goat, and sent them with his son David to Saul. And David came to Saul and entered his service. Entered his service? Saul liked him very much. And David became one of his armor bearers. Then Saul sent word to Jesse, saying, "Allow David to remain in my service, for I am pleased with him." Whenever the Spirit of God came on Saul, David would take up his lyre and play. Then relief would come to Saul, and he would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting stuff in this chapter.
Mhm.
Not just spirits coming on each other, but
Oh, I hate English.
Oh, the talented fingers that bring release, possibly of
yeah, right.
ectoplasm.
Yeah.
You know what's worse? The original Hebrew is he played in his hand.
I bet he did. I bet he did.
Oh God! Oh God!
Jelly came onto him, or
So interesting things to cover, right? For me personally, what was really weird is like let's talk about these introductions, right? So we have almost 2 introductions for David, right? You know how
Mhm.
he is getting into the business of, I don't know, politics, you could call it. So
King.
tentatively you can call it politics.
No.
Well,
How
it's
he
giving
entered
it's,
the
it's
Game
giving
of
church
Thrones.
politics.
Yeah, it's giving church politics. Yeah. So firstly, the story about, you know, like, oh, you know, you got to go anoint this guy, and I'm going to show you who to anoint. Now the issue here for me, at least one of them, is has he? I don't think he's met Jesse before. He just shows up to a place, weirdly knows who Jesse is, and Jesse knows him, because that's not really.
Well, he knows of him.
Well,
I mean,
Samuel's
it's Samuel.
famous.
He's been ruling for a long time, and obviously
Yeah.
he's fully capable of telling if God's pissed with you and we need to kill you all. So, you know, they're like, hey, so we're good, right? We haven't done a thing that God would not like, because we could totally not do whatever it is you don't want us to do. Please don't kill us.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I suppose that is true. That, you know, because of his, I guess you could call it rule. Maybe not rule, but his prophethood. I don't know what you want to call it.
Prophet. He was sort of prophet, priest, and judge
Yeah,
at that time.
whatever you want to call that.
He was an early influencer.
I suppose that would be like a way that he would know him. Like, I'm not. I guess it's not shocking that Jesse would know Samuel, but that Samuel knows specifically Jesse, would be something.
Yeah, but he's a prophet. He can easily just be like,
Of
"Oh,
course,
God
of
told me
course.
to do a thing," and they're like, "Okay,
course, yeah,
God
he just knows.
told you to do the thing. Cool."
So that would be so yeah, this first one where this person David is very much unlike Saul. Saul was a fucking warrior. This guy is a schmuck. He's just tending to some sheep
He's
or
a
something.
putz.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
He's ruddy.
This is a trope that we've come across so many times, and I always like
Yeah.
to mention it. The youngest is beloved.
Mhm.
The
Subverting,
the
like, the
weak,
one who you would necessarily
Yeah.
think
Yeah,
would
the
have them.
second takes the rights of the firstborn. I've been
Yeah.
saying this since Genesis. Yeah.
Yeah. And also,
So I think
being a shepherd is also seen as like.
I think some of this is one of the features of this story comes through in verses 6 and 7, right? Well, in verse 7 in particular, for not as a man sees does Yahweh see. Man sees only what is visible, but Yahweh sees into the heart, right?
Right. Yeah.
And there's some interesting things happening here. I think from a perspective, from a literary perspective, the way in which this verb to see kind of pops up here and there throughout the text, like in verse 1, when Aaron's translation said that I have chosen among the sons of Jesse for myself a king, it's actually I have seen among the sons of Jesse for myself to be king. But yeah, so it's I think there's something going on here in this particular story about how God sees in sharp contrast to how people
So
see.
maybe if it's like a scriptural choice, like the last chapter was all about hearing and stuff.
Yeah.
Or
Mm.
if
I think
maybe that's why it
there's-
kind of brings up appearances more in this one.
Yeah, yeah,
right?
but God
He
says he's not
sees, so we have to
interested
say
in it.
what he looks like and his ready appearance.
God says he's not interested in appearances, but he's only interested in, ooh, he's healthy. He's very
ready.
handsome.
He's
Lubricate
red.
him for me.
Yeah, he doesn't necessarily want someone who's tall and strong, but he wants someone hot.
God's into twinks. Confirmed. Because, especially at this time, what you're going to want in a king is big muscle man. You want bear who fights with two-handed axe, you know. And that's, because war.
That's definitely
was
how I
kind of-
picture Saul.
Yeah. Me big man fight smash. Whereas God clearly likes them young and skinny and oiled up. And, with of course, the pleasing element of the noble humility of the shepherd, which makes David a good person, because poverty is noble when it happens to the correct literary character.
Yeah, everyone prefers Legolas over Gimli. I don't know why.
Oh, no, Gimli is the shit. Mind you, in the books, I think the movie did Gimli a disservice. And I'll forget what they did to Faramir because of the second half of that, but not Gimli.
Then Tozian says, I'm sure this has been addressed before, but is Samuel considered historical?
Generally not.
Okay.
It's not out of the realm of possibility, but we don't have any evidence for him.
These legends could have,
So-
6 or 7 different people could have contributed.
And then Argspeed, if I'm reading that right, says, from the practical guide to evil, we make shepherds into kings because they're used to stubborn, bleeding creatures of limited intellect.
So courtiers.
Okay,
Yes. I was gonna say, like in Christianity, they like to bring up the whole sheep versus shepherd analogy of man and Jesus or man and God.
Yeah, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, yada yada. It's and I think Hitchens had the best response to that. Shepherds don't look after sheep because they like them, though some shepherds like them much too much. They look after them in order to fleece them, fuck them, or eat them,
Right.
or kill them. And that's
Yeah.
honestly, historically, far more like the clergy.
Okay, I'll start on verse 1. Auld comments, Yahweh's first words to Samuel not only resume the terms in which the narrator has closed the previous chapter, but reach farther back as well. His ad matai, till when or how long, nicely adapts some of the sounds of ad yomoto, till the day of his death in 1535. By subverting these, Yahweh may be mocking the fact that Samuel has gone into mourning before Saul ever dies. And the verb mourn, mitabel, also resumes 1535. Then the verbal structure of Samuel's chiding is an exact copy of Eli's scolding Hannah in 114, quote, till when will you make yourself drunk, end quote. Not since 114 has ad matai been used again, and there too it introduces a verb in hitpael. Yahweh insists that Samuel's mourning and Yahweh's own regret, quote unquote, are not to be confused. Yahweh's regret is tantamount to rejection. Saul's replacement, already talked about in 1314, is close to being identified. The Lucianic recension repeats the opening words, and Yahweh said to Samuel, before fill your horn. And this exact repetition could indicate that the remainder of verse 1a had been a secondary addition intended to link the reports in chapters 15 and 16.
I did want to mention it. It was important for Samuel to fill his horn before going to choose.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah.
Just got to make sure.
After a week, after a week of
okay.
mourning,
Oh,
Well, I imagine the horn would already be quite full after a week.
Yeah.
I would say that atmatai is a very common saying in the
Yes.
IDF because it designates when will my service be over.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's
We're going
also
to this.
Orthodox Jews also use the expression "admatai" a lot when talking about like the Messiah. So like admatai, until when do we have to suffer this world without God, like coming back and all that sort of coming back. That sounds wrong. Returning to a godly world or whatever.
The apocalypse where the chosen people get to live on the corpses of everyone God slaughtered for annoying him. Yeah, that seems to be a really weird thing for everyone to look forward to. Kind of gross.
Yeah.
Mind you, the Christians are trying to make it a physical reality, so yay.
Yeah. Okay, now on verse 4. The elders of the town trembled when they met him. Hebrew for trembled is vayecherdu, from the root chet resh daled, which usually means to tremble or be terrified, according to BDB Dictionary. Kimchi wrote that the elders were surprised of his arrival, and perhaps were afraid that there was somebody in the town that has committed a great sin for which Samuel had come. Klein writes that their trembling may reflect their general reverence for Samuel, as we see in the case of Achimelech and David in 1 Samuel 21:2, which is one in the Old Testament. Targum, followed by Rashi, renders the elders gathered to him, with Kimchi explaining that the root chet resh daled is used in Hosea 11 verses 10 to 11 to refer to gathering. On verse 7, do not consider his appearance or his height. Much like Saul in 9:2 and 10:23, Eliab is noted for his height and beauty. McCarter notes that some scholars see this as a veiled attack on the theme of Saul's beauty and height. He notes that Mettinger sees Eliab as a new Saul, quote-unquote, and that the episode in general is reminiscent of Saul's election by lottery, as we see in 10 verses 17 through 27. On verse 12, glowing with health and a fine appearance. The word translated to glowing with health is admoni. The word is taken by early translations to mean ruddy or having a bright pink skin, according to Bar-Efrat, from the word adom, which means red. The only other person who is described as admoni is Esau in Genesis 25:25. Auld writes that Esau becomes known as a hunter, a man of the outdoors, and perhaps this is what's suggested here of David. Likewise, Tsumura notes C.H. Gordon's opinion that in the ancient Near East, red is the color appropriate for men. Thus, quote, Esau and David are described as naturally red, showing that they were born to be heroes, end quote. The phrase, a fine appearance, is translated from im yafe einaim. Although the Septuagint and Vulgate, followed by traditional commentators, took it to mean that David was fair to look at, Targum and Peshitta, followed by Bar-Efrat, take it to mean that his eyes were beautiful, literally. McCarter amends the text to read ruddy and attractive, adom venaim. But Klein writes that this emendation, quote, fails to convince because of the nearly identical expression in 1742, which McCarter deletes without textual warrant, end quote. Tsumura notes that the 9th century sun disk, quote-unquote, tablet from Sipar has the expression ruddy countenance and beautiful eyes to describe a happy king with a bright face. Van Staldijn... Sorry?
What's the word you just used?
A what?
To describe a
countenance.
Yeah, no, the word afterward you said to describe a...
To describe
something.
A happy king...
Oh, happy.
Did I say?
Happy king. Okay, I heard something like Kappa King, and I was like, oh,
no, happy king with a bright face.
Right. Okay.
Van
Sounds like he's either
Staldijn...
sunburnt or drunk.
I don't know, whatever it is, it sounds like it costs extra.
Yeah.
As,
Sorry.
All right, just finish the verse, Tomer.
Yeah.
Okay. Van Staldijn Solman notes that David's beauty is the source of the view that the Messiah is also beautiful, as we see in the Targum on 1 Samuel 18:5, 2 Samuel 23:8, and Targum in Psalms 45:3.
So, as I was going to say, as someone with a naturally pink skin, I approve of this. I approve of this reading. But and just a reminder to everyone that to everyone that Esau, the only other figure in the biblical text who is described using this language as the eponymous ancestor of the Edomites.
Yeah.
Who are
He is.
Is this where it comes from, the idea of like David being described as having red hair as well?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah. Yeah.
I bet.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
no.
It's just like an alternative understanding of this verse.
Yeah. You could say
Like
that.
he's red. He was
Yeah.
red.
I would just think being like a bit sunburned makes more sense, considering that he works as a shepherd and is thus outside a lot. And, you know, if he was not sufficiently melanated, we do get the pink.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're
I'm just
talking about
trying to-
people who are like from the Middle East. They would have, I imagine, the shepherds would have just been dark rather than red.
It's hard for me to imagine a ginger Jew too.
Oh, there's a lot.
Plenty.
Ashkenazi especially.
Yeah,
I've known one.
it's weird.
I know
it's
one
like there's-
personally, actually.
Yeah. There's actually,
Okay.
it feels almost like there's more red-headed Ashkenazi Jews than any European group I can think of, besides obviously like
Irish.
Irish,
Not Irish.
but like there's
Not
no
Irish.
right, but that's like a completely different like connection, and I wonder if that's like if it comes from like a really early root or not. It's interesting.
With all our diseases, maybe. On verse, yeah, on, yeah,
Or
Red-
some people might like to say it's because we have no soul.
Yeah,
of course,
of course.
of course.
Red
Okay.
hair is found in very inbred populations, actually.
Oh,
Conan O'Brien told us
I mean,
that.
what? Maybe it's one of those. Maybe because it's like dominant or whatever. Once you have it, and then you have inbreeding, it's not gonna. You're not gonna have anything take over it.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
I'm a little miffed because I'm one gene, well, half a gene away from being ginger myself. You know, my grandmother was ginger. Several people in my family were ginger. Yeah.
I have ginger nieces and nephews, but no one else. Actually, my brother's kind of ginger as well, but only in his beard.
Ginger.
Okay, I'll continue on verse 13. The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. Much like Saul in 10... Don't.
I'm just thinking, it came
When the horn is
powerfully.
full.
Was it like from 4 feet away?
Well, I mean, the Hebrew is vatitzlach, which I don't think it has any
That sounds
sexual
exactly
connotations.
like what it should sound.
Yeah,
To send?
titzlach.
Oh,
I mean, it's the root. It's
It's-
tzadik lamet chet, right?
I was gonna say when your
rush.
horn is full, like it's gonna be stronger than usual.
Yeah. Filthy bastards. So much like Saul in 10:6 and 11:6, the divine spirit also rushes upon David. Klein notes that the spirit in 11:6 is not directly connected to Saul's anointing, and quote, even in 10:6 and 10, his charismatic endowment is separated chronologically from the anointing, end quote. With David, the spirit seems to be a direct result of the anointing, and it lasted permanently, in contrast with the quote-unquote spasmodical aspect of the spirit upon Saul. He writes, quote, while historical and chronological reasons may lie behind these distinctions, a comparison of the present accounts of Saul's and David's anointings demonstrates the superiority of David's spirit endowment, both in its close connection with the anointing and its permanence.
My endowment
Yeah,
is bigger than your endowment.
It is really
Yay.
weird that they
Yeah.
have added this apotropaic thing to the story. So the thing is that is different than what we get before, which is just an anointing, right? It's like this is the guy that's going to be king, and then now he's like in this other part of the story. It's like he's working for Saul, and he's working in an apotropaic way as like the fucking magician or something. And then in the next chapter, he's also going to be a little bit different, where he's doing something else. So it's really interesting how many different versions of this David we see.
It is exactly like Saul having 3 different origin stories at the moment he's introduced,
Yep.
all being, cited as different elements of his anointing as king. The spiritual, the military, and the people. But in this case, it's a different kind of spiritual, but yeah, or a magical, if you will. But yeah, it's very clear that this is not a concise and coherent story about singular people who actually existed, and this is all one narrative, because it very much isn't, especially when Saul, who apparently loves this guy and keeps him as an armor bearer and to play his liar, just, doesn't have the first fucking clue who he is in the next chapter.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this in the in the story from chapter 10 about the entry of the Spirit of God into Saul, but this is it's a very invasive expression. From the cognates have to do with success, with splitting wood, with making great progress, thriving, and the first entry is with the sense of forced entry. It's it's a very invasive
So it sounds a bit rapey.
Kind of an action here. Yeah, it's pretty rapey. So
Always lovely to know that about God.
Huh. Now on that same verse about David, this is the first time the name is mentioned in the Hebrew Bible, and David is the only character in the Bible to possess the name. Tsumura notes several explanations to his name. Quote, 1. A connection with the Hebrew David, meaning beloved or even uncle, as we see in Amos 6:10 and according to Herzberg. 2. The shortened form of a personal name whose theophoric element is a sun deity, Dodo. However, there is yet no clear evidence that such a deity ever existed in the ancient Near East. And 3. The Akkadian term Dawidum from Mari was previously taken to mean commander and connected with the name David, but the Mari word actually means defeat. At the present time, then, 1 is the most promising. The oldest extra-biblical attestation of David is in the 9th century BCE Aramaic inscription from Tel Dan.
So the sun god's name is Dodo.
Yes.
Well, someone who thought that there was a sun god called Dodo, though? Where does it come from, the idea?
Well, that's the other thing. He mentions the sun god's name is Dodo, but it's the Egyptians who have the sun god, not the Jews.
I mean, everybody's got a sun
Well,
god.
yeah, everyone's got.
Well, and
yeah.
then right away, Tomer says that the comment right after that it was there's no evidence that there ever was a sun god.
Well,
Indeed.
By the name of Dodo.
By the name of Dodo.
Dodo,
Yeah.
By the name of Dodo.
Yeah, I think it's possibly one scholar who, based on
Oh God,
theology,
I
is
can tell you who.
Dodo
I
is the
can
name of God.
I'm interested to hear who that scholar was.
Was it David
Who?
Falk?
No, even worse. Kenneth
Oh, God.
Kitchen.
Oh, yeah.
What? No,
Oh,
Kenneth
yeah.
Kitchen.
Can't be.
Don't fucking. Oh, get that shit out of here.
Is it?
Yeah,
No,
no,
is
it's
it?
Kenneth Kitchen, a possible mention of David in the late 10th century BCE, and the Dod as dead as the Dodo.
Get that shit out of here. Get Kenneth Kitchen's stupid
Wait,
ass
he's
out
the
of
one
here.
who's saying that it's not. It's that idea is.
That's who Tsumura cites as there is no yet clear evidence that such a deity
Oh.
ever existed in ancient Near East.
Okay, he's saying that the older guy, the person who said that Dodo was a sun god, and that might be possibly a part of the name.
It sort of it sounds like
he's
Kitchen is countering
saying
that
it's
idea.
not.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Saying,
okay.
no, no,
Well,
he's
either
not
way,
understanding
no one
himself.
should ever listen to Kitchen either way. All right, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If you're talking about the Bible, you don't listen to Kenneth Kitchen. All right, that is one of the first rules about.
She might be
biblical
quoting
studies.
him in the sense of like even he says this is
Sure,
far-fetched.
but
That's like saying even Ken Ham agrees that this is a transitional fossil.
That the Earth is
I mean, to be
spherical.
fair, his article is quoted 50 times, and it's from 97. Where is it from?
Okay.
Journal for the Study of the Old Testament.
Of course. So Kenneth Kitchen is atrocious when it comes to biblical stuff. His primary work is in Egyptology, and as far as I've heard, he is fine when it comes to Egyptology. But when I think he wrote a book that he was trying to prove the historicity of the Old Testament or something, and it was fucking garbage. And he still maintains those views. It's not like he moved on from those in later in his career or something.
I was
No,
I
it's
was gonna
possible.
say I think Kitchen's book on the historicity of the Old Testament is what prompted the great Oxford scholar James Barr to write his classic work on fundamentalism. So it's
Interesting.
and if people haven't read that, that's a book they need to read. But
Yeah, put the name in the comments because
it's
It's always possible
easy.
for
It's fundamentalism.
Well, yeah,
it's pretty
So yeah,
it's pretty
by
common for
James
people
Barr.
to be good at one specific thing, and then they try to branch out because they think, oh, I'm an expert in this, then I know everything else. And there's plenty of people.
but he
like that.
clearly
It seems to be
desperately wants to prove a fundamentalist view of the Bible, which is just not borne out by any part of reality. And if it was, they wouldn't need to lie so hard every time you look at anything.
Yeah. But
maybe
I
it's
mean,
just
it
me,
might
but
be,
it
Yeah.
seems to be a real problem among Egyptologists. Maybe just
Okay,
So
let's
to get-
let's
to get
talk.
into
So we
news.
got
Okay.
Kitchen, we got Hoffmeyer, and then
Petrovich. You've got Petrovich.
Petrovich,
and
okay,
you've
yeah,
got,
These are all
that one guy
Egyptologists.
who's always being a dick
he
online. We got that
who
guy.
shall not be named.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
the
got
now
that.
disgraced Egyptologist. So,
International eye.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Okay, I'll continue on verse 14, evil spirit. Klein writes that the Bible frequently ascribes evil or temptation to the hand of Yahweh, as we see in Deuteronomy 13, verses 2 through 4, Amos 3:6, 2 Chronicles 24:1, and 1 Chronicles 21:1. Likewise, God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem, Judges 9:23, and a lying spirit in the mouth of false prophets, 1 Kings 22, verses 19 through 22. McCarter writes that in ancient tradition, a person once touched by divine spirit can never again be free. He writes that while the evil spirit may refer to mental illness, perhaps paranoia or bipolar disorder, he notes Herzberg's observation that Saul's suffering is described theologically, not psychologically. Tsumura comments, the phrase a spirit of evil, ruach ra'ah, is grammatically a construct chain like anshei ra'ah, men of evil, Proverbs 24:1, that is, men who do evil to others, not evil men, which would be anashim ra'im, and also ruach sheker, a spirit of deception, though it is often translated as a lying spirit, though it is often translated as a lying spirit. So it does not mean an evil spirit with an adjective. See verse 23 and 18:10. Note that the term ra'ah.
So is it like the difference between an evil spirit and a spirit of evil or spirit of maliciousness?
Yeah,
Like, okay.
something like that.
Makes
Note that
sense.
the term ra'ah is a female singular noun for evilness. Here, rather than an adjective, evil. Thus, Bloch's explanation hits the mark. Quote, a bad spirit of God is bad, quote unquote, because the effects of his possession are negative and destructive for object, end quote.
I would have thought possession is always negative, but that's just me.
Well, we have like quite a lot in the last few chapters of like the Lord, the spirit of the Lord comes on someone, and that's sometimes negative, but as well. But yeah,
but it's always non-consensual.
yeah.
Deeply.
On verse 16, someone who can play the lyre. McCarter notes Spinoza's observation, quote, music is good to the melancholy, end quote. Just wanted to, yeah. He writes that in every ancient society, music was seen as apotropaic towards demons. Tsumura writes that it was believed in the ancient Near East that the lyre, kinor, had a divine power, and a deified kener is listed in the official pantheon list of ancient Ugarit. Auld comments, quote, just as Saul's first encounter with divine spirit has been in the company of prophets who include musicians, so now a musician may help the terrifying spirit to pass from him.
I'll mention this because I think it's interesting and pertinent. So there are a number in Second Temple Judaism. A number of the Psalms were viewed as like exorcism texts, and we actually have collections of these in the Dead Sea Scrolls, collections of Psalms as exorcism ritual texts.
Oh yeah, I think I was actually reading through some of those the other day. Like there was this one about like they had a whole bunch of different, like a list of different demons and different like ailments that they would cause, and there were a lot of citations from Psalms in there.
That's not terrifying at all.
I've never heard of deified musical instruments before. That's very interesting.
That's wild, eh? Yeah.
Okay, on verse 18, the list of David's attributes here seems unnecessary, since Saul only requested for a musician. Rashi wrote that this intends to make Saul envy David. Kimchi writes that these 6 attributes are required from a person who is enlisted in the royal court. Kara writes that the servant's purpose is to say to Saul that he also needed a person to fight his wars. Garsiel writes that these words intend to portray David's personality with the myriads of characteristics as he enters the narrative. Regarding the phrase, and Yahweh is with him, Auld writes, like so much other significant comments throughout 1 Samuel, this phrase anticipates an evaluation of David made early in the source text, 2 Samuel 5:10. More immediately, the courtier anticipates the narrator's judgment in 1814. All the other uses of this and similar phrases are clustered in the same few chapters of 1 Samuel, the new beginning of the story of David, where the courtier and the narrator are echoed first by Saul himself, 1737 and 1828, and then by Jonathan in 2013. Loving David and recognizing that Yahweh is with him seem to be very closely related. It may simply be that while humans love quote-unquote David, something less effective is reported of Yahweh. In the books of Samuel, he is said to love, quote-unquote, only the newborn Solomon in 2 Samuel 12:24. On verse 20, a donkey loaded with bread, in Hebrew, chamor lechem, literally a donkey, a bread, or some food. This reading is taken by some to mean a donkey loaded with bread, as seen in most early translations, Kara, Kimchi, and Bar-Efrat. However, the Septuagint reads a gomor, i.e. an omer, of bread, with omer being a measurement unit.
It was a technical unit, an ass load of bread.
Of course it does, yeah. I expected Aaron to make that joke, but yeah. The Lysianic recension and Vitus Latina conflate the two readings, and Jesse took an ass and placed on it an omer of loaves. McCarter favors this reading and takes the Masoretic text and Septuagint as suffering similar haplographies. Tsumura, however, writes that an omer of bread is the size of a modern loaf, and would be too small of an amount to take to a king as a gift. He takes chamor to be a loanword of the Akkadian imeru, which is, quote, an ass measure of about 80 to 160 liters. And the ass in quotation marks.
Wait, what do you mean by ass? So is it referring to an ass load, or what does it mean by ass load?
Like
ass measure.
I actually don't know. Wait, let me look.
It sounds like it's taking a measurement of how much your ass can take.
Yeah. This is about the size of a modern loaf and would be too small an amount to take on gifts. He notes NEB's Homer by reading Homer, a dry measure, quote, perhaps originally meaning ass load is much more realistic. Nevertheless, such an alteration of the text, however minimal, is not necessary. Yeah, I mean...
So I was right.
I mean, kind of. I mean, he writes, this measure seems to have gone out of use in Israel. Compared to 5th century Ostrakon Arad 3, sections 4 to 5, load of a pair of donkeys, Masa Tzemet Chamurim, and 2 kings 2 Kings
So
5:17 and 1 Kings 8:3.
So it's literally, rather than being an actual donkey laden with bread, he prepared a donkey of bread. It's more like he prepared an amount of bread equal to what you would put on a donkey.
Yeah, yeah. The
And
Homer.
so using the word donkey as a measure.
Yeah, the Homer is how much a donkey can carry according to Ahaoni.
So it's like, a donkey of bread.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because in English it works both ways as well. A donkey of bread could mean the donkey of the bread, or it could be a donkey of bread, a donkey worth, donkey amount of bread.
Yeah. Okay, on verse 21, Saul liked him very much. In Hebrew, vaye'ehavehu me'od. The root aleph heish bet means to love, and the use of the verb here indicates that Saul was greatly pleased with David. Commentators cite W.L. Moran that love in the ancient Near East is used to describe the loyalty and friendship between a king and his subject, as seen in the El Amana letters. McCarter follows J.A. Thompson, who suggested that love may have a political nuance. He writes, quote, "The king has given official recognition of the young man and made a kind of legal commitment to him. That is, he has loved, quote-unquote, him and appointed him to be his weapon-bearer, an intimate servant of the king," end quote. Tsumura, however, notes R.P. Gordon's view that it is unnecessary, quote, "to read into love the connotation of a political or legal commitment," end quote. And finally, verse 23, David would take up his lyre and play. Tsumura comments, "In a pagan religion, the lyre would have been used for exorcism, quote-unquote, but here there is no sign that it was part of any rite. David's ability to play the lyre well comes from the Spirit of the Lord, a gift of the Spirit. David is attested as a musician in the title The Minstrel of the Songs of Israel in 2 Samuel 23:1. He is referred to as the author of several songs at 2 Samuel 1 verses 7 to 27, 22 verses 1 through 51, 1 Chronicles 16 verses 7 to 42, and, according to their titles, a number of psalms. He was credited with setting up the temple musicians in 1 Chronicles 6:31, and the 8th century BCE prophet Amos says David was an improviser on musical instruments, i.e. he made up new melodies, according to Amos 6:5. The Nikal hymn from late Bronze Age Ugarit, with full musical notation, illustrates the centuries-long musical history in ancient Canaan before David.
Is that like, I wonder if that is that like the oldest musical notation we have? Like, that seems very old.
In Ugarit?
Yeah.
Nikal hymn.
That could be.
I was surprised to hear that a lyre was used for exorcisms. I would have thought bagpipes.
Honestly,
That's how you exercise. That's how you get rid of the angels in the room. It's like,
apparently it's how you get rid of the English.
angles, angels.
Many exorcisms were about, this is obviously more of a music soothes the savage beast kind of a vibe, but exorcisms are frequently about making the demon as uncomfortable as possible, usually by torturing the poor innocent victim, and that will drive them away. Huzzah.
You know, there's also in one of the Homeric hymns, I think, is it to Hermes or Apollo? I forget which one it is, but maybe it's to Hermes. So there's part of the story is that Apollo or Hermes steals Apollo's cows, and Apollo's like super pissed off, and he goes and finds Hermes, and Hermes, he essentially takes Hermes to court. He takes him up to Zeus, and Zeus is like, "I know you took these, just give them back to Apollo." And Hermes is like, "Fine, whatever." And Hermes starts playing the lyre, and he actually made the lyre out of a turtle that he found, which was really fucked up, because he starts off the story by saying, "Oh my god, turtle, you're amazing," or tortoise, I forget which one it was. He was like, "I love you so much, you're so adorable. I'm gonna keep you forever, and then he fucking slaughters it and mangles it and turns its carcass into an instrument. So he's a psychopath. But
Liar.
the thing is, he turns it into a lyre, and then by the end of it, because he's such a good player of the lyre, Apollo and Hermes become like best buds. Or like Apollo forgot that he completely hated this snot-nosed little brat. So
basically, that's the Greek version of American Psycho.
it's unhinged. Hermes is unhinged.
I mean, everyone knows
Hermes
that,
is unhinged.
if you look at the exorcisms in general, like in documented history, exorcisms, we all know that demons speak Latin and hate classical music. So
It depends. Christian demons do. Apparently, Muslim demons have to be splashed with water, and there's a different set of magical words in Arabic. But maybe those are just the jinn.
What's the name of the Christian exorcism grifter, the evangelical guy? Oh,
Which one?
There's so many. Yeah.
oh,
which
I know. Oh, shoot.
which exorcist?
I'd like to
grifter?
cite the Catholic Church.
Well, no, he's not Catholic, right? He's shoot. I wish I could. I wish.
Is
I
he the
could
one
remember.
featured on Penn and Teller who screamed obscenities at the demon?
We have someone in
Is it the
Maybe
one
that's
who?
next.
Is it the
Oh,
one who
is it
is
Peter
a
Popoff?
demon?
No, it's not Peter Popoff.
Okay.
It's
He's
Kevin
not as
Kenneth
prominent.
Copeland here in Dallas.
And it's-
He's the
and
one
it's
who
not
is a
him.
demon.
He has a daughter who has like teenage friends. Well, I guess they're young adults now, but like 6 or 7 years ago, they were actually in negotiation with I think it was the American Broadcasting Corporation to make a TV show about about teenage exorcists. Pretty teenage girls going around and casting out demons. God, what was his name? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Who
I gotta look this up now.
Yeah, please tell us, because that sounds like one of the more interesting of the repulsive evangelical grifters. Not interesting is the nicest thing I can say.
We have assurance from God's servant that a lot of exorcisms are fake.
Oh, good. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have some Christians as well.
Okay.
So, Lactantius wrote that David, who was anointed as king and prophet, prefigures Christ. Of course he did.
Christ. But they all say the same fucking thing.
Yeah, Jesus also was ginger and handsome.
Yeah. I've seen Jesus black and Asian and Mexican. I've seen him Elvis. I've seen Elvis Jesus on a black velvet painting.
I've never heard of Jesus being good with music though.
Those
And
are
I have-
all incredibly disturbing, but I still don't think anything is more cringe than the creepy worship of Trump with all the evangelical stuff.
Bob Larson.
Bob.
And I have a portrait of Jesus that I kept because I remember when my great grandmother had it on her wall, and it was one of the things I inherited. But it's Viking Jesus.
Okay, that is actually pretty awesome.
Historically accurate.
Do any
Blonde hair,
any of you guys,
curly blonde hair, blue eyes, and the father standing there with his big old axe over his shoulder. Yeah.
any of you guys heard of Bob Larson? The
name is familiar.
the radio exorcist. He's been doing this shit for like 35 years.
Wait, radio
Yeah.
exorcist, as in does
He
he
used to run a-
exercise over the radio?
Oh yeah, he used to run. But when I was a teenager, he used to run a radio program that was popular in circles I grew up in, where people would call in, and he just pretend to exercise them over the airwaves.
That sounds a lot like Kenneth Copeland, though. Didn't
What
he
a-
have people
pretty
come
similar.
up to your television screen and tell
He's not nearly as
as
as successful a grifter as
Or
Kenneth
charismatic.
He's
Copeland,
also
but
not
then,
nearly as
who is?
demonic.
He's also way lazier.
Yes,
If
much
for those who
lazier.
don't know who Kenneth Copeland is, if you ever saw Jim Carrey's movie The Mask, when the bad guy puts on the mask, that's Kenneth Copeland.
Yeah,
Honestly, as time passes, he's looking more and more like a skinwalker. Like he literally, it's like the bug that took the man on as a skin suit in the original Men in Black. It's like I'm like, this is why people came up with the reptoid conspiracy theory, isn't it? It's Copeland. He's the reason.
He's made lots of people believe in demons.
When I was in when I was in my undergrad at university, that was part of my ritual every morning was turning on for shits and giggles Kenneth Copeland's TV show. He actually had like a kids show back in the late 90s, early 2000s, in which his daughter starred as, and it was like she was like a special forces leader of like this spiritual black ops group of recruits who are out there fighting the evil. It was something.
But I remember the radio show.
Kenneth Copeland would make cameos in this show as like the Star Commander or the Emperor, or who the hell ever. It was it was wild.
Who were the enemies?
I've seen the radio show.
The devils, the demons. They're all. It's all.
I've heard the radio show that you're talking about.
Oh, Bob Larson's.
It was so fucking irritating because.
Have you guys ever seen Bible Man?
Yeah.
You know what I watched is the Bible Reloaded's old reviews of Bible Man.
No, those are great.
I cannot. I can't watch that shit without like commentary and face palming, and someone who also wants to drink when they see this shit.
They need to make the crossover Bible Man versus Yo-Yo Man.
If there's ever like some some secular thing in Milwaukee at some point, I have a copy of the board game. I think it was Intelligent Design versus Evolution from Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron. So I have a copy of that. So we should totally play it. Literally every single question, whatever you think the right answer is, it's actually the opposite of that.
Okay, we will only. There will be alcohol.
Yeah.
There will be so much alcohol.
That's a whole genre we should look into. Creationist board games, creationist snakes and ladders.
We also have Bibleopoly.
Okay, speaking of which,
that one.
I remembered it while I've got you all assembled here. A week from today, I will be in Sarnia, Ontario.
We can do Tuesday. I don't mind.
Very good.
I won't sleep, but I won't mind.
Can we do the Tuesday after that too?
Yes.
Outstanding. That's what I would prefer to do. Do both of the Tuesdays, and then go back onto the Saturday thing. Thank you.
That will work.
And I still have Christians though.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah,
I thought you just prayed for those.
No, I just quoted one. Okay.
One is enough. No, I'm joking.
No, never enough. Okay, so Gregory of Nazianzus writes that since only God can judge the heart, Christians should refrain from judging ministers based upon their credentials.
Right. Why would we pay attention to credentials and education? What the hell does that have to do with teaching the Bible?
That sounds so insidious. Like, don't judge ministers.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. Do not ask for credentials of the preacher or the baptizer, for another is his judge and the examiner of what you can see. For humans look on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart.
Boy.
I mean, maybe this is like in a system where you have someone higher up who says this is going to be your minister, and then the congregation has no right to say who the minister is going to be. But
you said that was Gregory of Nazianzus, right?
Yes.
Wasn't that one of the Cappadocian church fathers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
So like there were three of them famously, like three big ones, and I think they basically just like appeared out of nowhere. They didn't have much. I don't think they had much stuff from beforehand.
So it was personal.
It may have been a little personal.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always get the guy with no education, but the Lord done told him that it said, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Cassiodorus writes that the Psalm of David are prophetic in nature because his inspiration came from none other than the Holy Spirit.
Well, that's kind of goes
Yeah.
without saying. I did want to say one thing. Who was it who mentioned that? I think it was Dr. Kip mentioned that like Psalms were used as like exorcist material, and I wonder if this section at the end, verse 23 specifically, where it says Saul would find relief and feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. If this kind of story was part of this, like, you know, what's the word? Like, you know, see, David was able to exercise. So if we use his music, we can also exercise.
That would make sense. That would make sense. The transitive property of the Holy Spirit is it's not like it's never clearly delineated, but there's a lot of stories with, you know, the passing of cloth that's been touched, or the guy who comes back to life when they throw him in Elisha's grave, or, you know, all kinds of things like that. So there's a lot of weird sort of
they're trying to say like the origin of this idea that Psalms have power to exercise.
Yeah.
As you see,
over
it's in
demons
the story.
specifically.
David was able to do it with his.
Right.
You could.
That is far from the
wrote.
craziest theological I've ever heard. So that has far fewer things.
Tomer, do you have any more
up
Christian
infinite.
Yes. Yes,
So-
I have more. But keep going. I don't mind.
Can I?
How do you order them?
oh.
Do you order them by date?
No, I ordered them by how they appear in the list
Oh.
of the ancient Christians. Like they have a overview, and then they expand on they cite the quotations. I go by that.
Okay.
Can
But
I?
Kip wanted to say something. Yes.
No, go ahead. If you need to finish Tomer, by all means.
Yeah, so the section 14 to 23 has like 10 Christians, but I only included half of them. But still, just a lot of them. But first, just a second.
So I guess Kip, go ahead.
Yeah. Right. So no, I just wanted to read. So one of the really, really interesting manuscripts from Qumran is a scroll of Psalms that was discovered in Cave 11. It's commonly called the Cave 11 Psalm scroll. And what's really intriguing about it is a selection of Psalms. I think there's around 40. They all come from after Psalm 100, so they're all between Psalm 100 and 154 going by the Syriac Psalter. Yes, there are additional psalms in other versions of the Book of Psalms, and they're all creatively rearranged, and there's additional texts as well included in there that we'd never seen before, all as actual psalms. It's pretty fun, but I just thought I'd read this because it's I think it's pertinent to this story. The last psalm in the great psalm scroll reads like this: Hallelujah, a psalm of David, son of Jesse. I was smaller than my brothers, youngest of my father's sons. So he made me a shepherd for his sheep, a ruler over his goats. My hands fashioned a pipe, my fingers a lyre, and I was glorified. And I glorified Yahweh. I said to myself, the mountains do not testify to him, nor do the hills proclaim. So echo my words, trees, sheep, my deeds. Ah, but who can proclaim, who declare the deeds of Yahweh? God has seen all, heard, and attended to everything. He sent his prophets to anoint me, even Samuel, to raise me up. My brothers went forth to meet him, handsome of figure, wondrous of appearance, tall were they of stature, so beautiful their hair. Yet Yahweh, God, did not choose them. No, he sent and took me, who followed the flock, and anointed me with the holy oil. He set me as a prince to his people, ruler of the children of his covenant. So there you go.
Okay.
Where was the you
Sorry.
said Yahweh 3 times in that psalm, but I'm only seeing it twice in the.
I think I was reading the English there. So yeah, you're right. The deeds of Adonai in line 7.
Oh, it's Adonai.
Whoops.
Yeah, I got one more comment from My Unfinished Journey, which seems like a good place to close out.
I have
Offers-
more Christians. Oh!
Well, there's a shampoo you can use to get rid of that.
Uh,
Lawrence has got COVID. Tom has got Christians.
In fairness, the Christians are far more insidious.
yeah. You read a comment first, and then.
No, this is the one comment I wanted to close on it. So go ahead.
Okay.
Tomer.
So Tertullian writes that God grants the devil power to inflict trials on humans in order to bring about their sanctification or punishment. Gregory of Nazianzus writes, where is it? It's not here. Oh, sorry. It's Ticetas of Remesiana. What a name. It says that by playing a harp, which symbolizes the cross, David sung the passion and subdued the spirit of the devil. Yeah.
The cross. How does he?
The cross.
Oh my God. Okay. You know what? Fine.
Whatever. It wasn't a what's that, like, triangular one, like a Russian guitar.
He writes not balalaika.
Balalaika, yeah. It wasn't a
Not
balalaika, like it doesn't have a cross shape.
He writes, not that there was any kind of power in the harp, but with its wooden frame and the strings stretched across, it was a symbol of the cross of Christ. Yeah.
Nice.
Cassiodorus writes that David's harp expelled the demon from Saul, reveals the virtue of the beautiful discipline of music. Gregory the Great writes that David's soothing of Saul's madness with sweet tones symbolizes how the saints can dispel the raving anger of leaders with gentle words.
Yeah, those are totally the same. Okay.
Yeah.
Works every time.
Yeah. And finally, Gregory of Nyssa writes that the symbolism of the singing advises that we must strive to subjugate the various passions that arise in us as our circumstances change. That's it.
If I roll my eyes any harder, I'm going to hurt myself.
I mean, it's quite a common trope for people to think that music has such a strong effect on us, that like certain genres of music are evil and satanic.
True.
Influence your behavior and
yeah.
Yeah, like classical music makes people boring, so we shouldn't be listening to that.
So, Tomer, do you still have?
Yeah, I'm
So
done.
you have chosen
no,
death.
I'm done.
Okay.
it is
Yeah,
quite funny
fine,
because you have
Lala.
like I'm almost sure there is like a
Kingdom
fiction trope of classical music being used while as maybe it's more of a, you know, how different they are to.
Oh, that's
Like
supposed to make
someone's
your
like-
plants grow or something.
No,
Or
but
make
like
your
you
kids
might have like
smart.
a sniper or something killing people, and it's like he's listening to classical music. Maybe that's a separate
Yeah,
It's
but it
like
makes you
a
boring. So
inversion of the same trope. Sorry.
I said, yeah, but it makes you
Lawrence is
boring.
desperately trying to pretend that I am boring. Well, I have never claimed to be the sum of all virtues.
Who's
I
pretending?
dare him to say it again.
I mean, Lawrence, what music would you listen to while sniping?
I wouldn't because I'm in the zone.
All right. So, are we ready for this closing comment? I'll take
Yes.
that as a yes.
Mm.
All right. My Unfinished Journey says, offers $6.66 and says, Hail Nero, hail Aaron and panel, and hail critical scholarship.
Hail Kenneth Kitchen.
Uh-huh.
Dishonor!
Sorry.
All right. I will see you guys Tuesday.
Great. Join the Discord. Do that.
Yeah.
See
Tell
you
me
then.
Tell me I'm wrong. Bye.
You can. You can do that.
You can also do that in the comment section.
No, tell it in my face.